Good morning. I'd like to welcome everybody here to the April 21st meeting of the Mojave County Board of Supervisors. We're going to start with an invocation by Pastor Kelly, and if you'd remain standing, the Pledge of Allegiance led by Supervisor Borelli.
Lord, thank you for today. Lord, I ask your blessing on each of these supervisors as you guide and direct their directions as they make decisions for Mojave County. Give them wisdom to make informed decisions, the courage to act with grace and dignity, and the compassion to hear the voices of the people. Let this time be fruitful and productive. Bless each supervisor, their homes, and their families. In Jesus' name, amen.
United States of America, the Republic, nation, civil.
The Board of Supervisors may by motion recess into executive session to receive legal advice from the Board's attorneys on any item contained in this agenda pursuant to ARS 38-431.03 A3, 4, and 7. I'm looking for a motion and action to call for an executive session to be held on May 5th, 2025 at 9 a.m.
So moved. Second.
That motion second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? I suppose have its order. Official business to come before the board. A discussion of pending or contemplated litigation, claims, and demands. Attorney Davis.
Nothing to report.
Thank you, sir. Committee and or legislative reports. Supervisor Martin. Thank you, sir. Supervisor Borelli. Supervisor Gould.
Nothing today, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Supervisor Letman. Your mic on.
Excuse me. I had the opportunity last week to go up to the sheriff's substation in Littlefield and Beaver Dam, and very much appreciate the opportunity to take a look around and kick the tires on a very old building that needs replacing.
Thank you. Also went up to Colorado City and had a day full of great civic events with the Chamber of Commerce up there and a nice venue in the evening. There's a lot of growth going on up there, both in Beaver Dam, scenic, Colorado City area. Those are going to be and continue to be hotspots for the county in the future. Do we have a lobbyist report from High Ground this morning, Steve? Mr. Ponder, are you with us this morning?
Mr. Chair, Supervisors, I am. Good morning.
Good morning.
And thanks again for the opportunity. Today is the 99th day of the legislative session. I will note that the House and the Senate just recently, within the last week and a half or so, maybe 2 weeks, have started to get together with the governor's office and started to discuss the budget. There's also been, I think, a lot of challenges between the executive and the legislature on some other issues related to developmental disability funding. So there's a lot of back and forth at this point in time. Last week, the governor issued an ultimatum and said, don't send any more bills to her desk until they resolve this developmental disability issue. So last Thursday was only committee of the whole work. There were no other bills sent to her desk out of concerns that those bills would be vetoed. So they will, I assume, attempt to work through those issues this week. I will also note that, just importantly, not necessarily for the water issues, although I do think it ties into the funding that we may be seeking in any type of groundwater plan. The Finance Advisory Committee met last week. You may recall that in January they had anticipated a budget surplus of around $620 million. because of everything that's going on in the markets right now and concerns about consumer sentiment, the JLBC decided to create an additional analysis. So last week, that additional analysis, they brought out anticipated only a $277 million surplus. That certainly could affect any resources that we are potentially seeking in funding for our groundwater legislation. So something that we're going to keep an eye on. JLBC is supposed to release a further report this morning that I will read as it comes out. As it relates to the groundwater legislation that we continue to work through, I had a conversation with Senator Dunn as well as the governor's office last week. Not last week, but the week before that, on Tuesday of that week, there was a meeting from the Department of Water Resources down in Wilcox. This all ties together because of how it relates to our issue here in Wilcox or in Mojave County, and the groundwater issue and the legislation. Because the issue in Wilcox, the Department of Water Resources, when they created the active management area down there, the meeting last Tuesday, they set forward a pretty aggressive goal in what the water conservation would be. That goal presented a lot of concern for the ag community. I know that the ag community met last Tuesday with Senator Dunn, Representative Griffin, the dairymen, the Farm Bureau, and the cattlemen. And their discussions based off of that meeting are going to guide what the negotiations will look like going forward. The governor's office, Senator Dunn, and Representative Griffin are supposed to meet early this week to discuss what sort of came out of that meeting with the ag community, which will then lead to potentially and hopefully further discussions and negotiations that would include Mojave County and a smaller working group of negotiations to try and come to a solution. Additionally, we are seeking, through the assistance of Senator Angus, to get Senator Dunn up to Mojave County to have a meeting, but also to tour the area and to see some of our experiences in the county, but also just the industry that we have in the county, and why we think that the council should be more reflective of the industry in the region and not just unilaterally have a majority makeup of agriculture. So that's what's been going on for the last 2 weeks since we last talked. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you for the report, Mr. Ponder. Are there any questions from our board members? Okay, thank you for the report today. We're going to move on to the county manager's report. Manager Alters.
Good morning, Chairman, board members. No report today.
Okay, very good. We're going to continue with a proclamation. We have a time set this morning for a public auction at 10 a.m. So when it gets to be 10 a.m., we're going to break whatever we're doing and go back to that. But we do have a proclamation this morning by the Mojave County Board of Supervisors. I'll read it into the record. Week of the National Lineman, April 21st through the 25th, 2025. Whereas the profession of lineman is steeped in personal, family, and professional tradition, and whereas linemen are often the first responders during storms and other catastrophic events, working to make the scene safe for other public safety heroes, and whereas linemen must work atop high power lines 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, oftentimes in inclement weather, to keep electricity flowing, and whereas linemen must often work under dangerous conditions, separated from their families to keep schools and businesses open, and whereas linemen deserve recognition from the community regarding the importance and danger of their work. Now, therefore, we, the Mojave County Board of Supervisors, do hereby proclaim April 21st, 2025, April 21st through the 25th, 2025, as the National Lineman Appreciation Week in Mojave County, Arizona.
Motion to approve.
Thank you. Do I have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
I appear to have it. Do we have any of the linemen here in the back there? You guys have there was a request, I think, from Allison that you guys wanted a photo. Do you guys want a photo, or do you want to just move on? Photo? Okay, why don't you guys all come down? And if the board would meet them in front of the dais here. All right, this morning we have a presentation by the Mojave County Indigent Defense Department regarding their mandates, operations, staffing, and budget needs, followed by a presentation by the Mojave County Probation Department on rising trends in youth violence. Blake, like I said, if it gets to be 10 o'clock, I'm going to have to pause you and we'll do this public auction and we'll just resume after that's over. So
Understood, Chairman.
go ahead.
Good morning, Chairman Lingenfelter, Supervisors, Manager Elters, Attorney Davis, Madam Clerk. I'm joined today by the Public Defender, John Gillenwater, the Legal Defender, Ron Gillio, and the Legal Advocate, Bobby Shin. I'm Blake Schroeder. I'm the Director of Indigent Defense Services for Mojave County. I know that there are two presentations today. We're going to be cognizant of everyone's time and try to get through the presentation fairly quickly. I'm going to begin with a brief history of indigent defense and a basic overview of the process in Mojave County. Excuse me, before handing it over to my colleagues to discuss our individual departments, staffing needs, and then we will answer any questions you may have at the end of the presentation. Until the 1980s, Mojave County contracted all cases to a single attorney, a practice the Arizona Supreme Court condemned in the landmark Joe U. Smith ruling. The ruling set statewide caseload guidelines for attorneys, leading to the creation of our Public Defender's Office and eventually the Legal Defender. Moving forward through the presentation, these guideline numbers are key as they show how many cases one attorney should handle annually, which is crucial when considering adding any additional staff. These guideline numbers are still applicable today. I want to point out that they suggest no more than 150 felonies and 400 misdemeanors per attorney. Likewise, only 200 juvenile cases and 25 appeals. So how does indigent defense work in our county? Well, we've had the same process since 2009. The court is responsible for determining whether parties in various cases, including criminal, juvenile, and probate, etc., qualify for appointed counsel. The case is then sent to my office where we review limited details and check for conflicts to determine the proper office for assignment. From there, it's assigned to either the Public Defender, our primary criminal defense office, the Legal Defender, our secondary defense office. If the case involves a juvenile, it's assigned to the Legal Advocate. And lastly, if no staff office can accept the case, it is assigned to a private attorney on contract through my office. I'm now going to hand the presentation over to John Gillenwater, our Public Defender.
Chairman, members of the board. My name is John Gillenwater. I've worked at the Public Defender's Office for the past 5 years, and I'm happy to present to you today. I'd first like to discuss a little bit about the rights that exist for the citizens, as well as anybody who has been, for anybody who has been accused in a criminal prosecution This has been established by the Sixth Amendment of the United States Constitution. Since that time, things have been expanded to include individuals who are facing involuntary mental health treatment, individuals who are facing an appeal, and juveniles. Also, the state of Arizona has established a statute that governs public defenders to assist in this mandate. Looking at the Mojave County Public Defender's Office, the chart on the left indicates the staffing levels of attorneys in 2010 and compared throughout the years. I'll note that in 2010, there were 20 attorneys as compared to today when there's only 12. The chart on the right indicates a comparison of similarly situated counties. It references their overall felony filings, as well as the number of public defender attorneys in each one of those respective offices. I will note that Mojave County has the highest felony filings and the lowest number of attorneys. The Public Defender's Office has one public defender, 12 attorneys, one office manager, 2 investigators, and 6 support staff. We cover 4 criminal divisions, 4 justice court divisions, 3 juvenile divisions, and the Title 36 or involuntary mental health division. Sorry. In determining the staffing needs within my office, we look at the number of courts that we must appear in front of. We look at the number of cases in each one of those respective courts. In determining, and we also look at case types. In determining case types, we look at 2 factors. First is the severity of the charge. The second is the complexity of the facts. It would seem obvious that a charge of murder would require more resources and time than a charge of littering. What is often overlooked is that not all cases are created equal. In determining the complexity of a case, it requires evaluation of the facts. If 2 individuals are charged with an aggravated assault, the facts and circumstances may determine a completely different level of resources and time. In considering all of these things, I've determined that the need of the Mojave County Public Defender's Office is 6 new attorneys, 1 new investigator, 3 support staff. Taking that down to its monetary value, it's at an estimated $1.2 million. I'll now turn the time over to Ron.
Good morning, members of the board, Chairman Lindenfeld, staff, county manager. For those who don't know who I am, mostly the public, I'm Ron Gillio, the Mojave County Legal Defender. I've been the legal defender now for basically 25 years. Prior to being a legal defender, I worked at the county attorney's office here in Mojave County for 4 years. And prior to that, I served in law enforcement at the Oklahoma County, Oklahoma Sheriff's Department, and Maricopa County Sheriff's Department from 1987 to 1996. I give that information because I spent a lot of time in the criminal justice system, so I'm very familiar with how all the components and agencies work together. In my office, and I'm going to update the board because since I made this slide, I had a little bit of an update. We have 1 legal defender, myself. Not only do I manage the office, but I also carry a caseload. We have 4 attorneys currently. We had 2 vacancies. One of my attorneys retired, Elena Sears, in November of 2024. I received word this morning, and let the county manager know this morning, that on June 3rd, I'll have another attorney that's coming on board. So we will have 1 opening. We use that 1 opening, obviously we want to fill it at some point, but we've been using it in the past year or 2 for summer interns, students that are in law school, giving them a taste of Mojave County. So essentially, hopefully when they graduate, we'll be the first place they're going to look to come. And we had an intern last summer. We're having an intern this summer, and so we're hopeful for that. As my bottom highlighted area said, logistics are difficult. And the reason why they're difficult in my office is, as you can just do a simple mathematical equation here. I'm terrible at math, that's why I became an attorney. But I can do the simple math. We have more courts to cover than we have people. I mean, we have all the same courts to cover that the public defenders have, but we have less people. Zoom appearances has helped us in the last couple of years, but still on a weekly or bi-weekly basis, I have staff that are traveling to either the jail, which isn't very far to go, to do remote appearances, but also we have staff that are going to Bullhead City for juvenile court, justice court. We're going to Havasu for juvenile court, for superior court, and for justice court. We go to, Bullhead, North Canyon, and also here in Kingman, obviously, we have juvenile court, and we have superior court criminal cases, and we have Title 36s. So my staff does an amazing job of juggling all this through a team approach. Matter of fact, because I'm here this morning, Greg Pridham is covering one of my cases, and Daniel Christian is covering another one of my cases that I'm not able to attend to because I'm here before the board. So we have a good team approach, but logistics are a struggle on a weekly basis. I've sat through and listened to the presentation by the other members of the criminal justice system, and basically these would be our needs. We're fine right now, but these would be our needs if there's more judges, there's more deputies, there are more county attorneys, there's more of everything, then that's going to cause, especially courts. If there's more courts, I mean, right now logistics is a problem, but if we have 5 more courts to cover, we're going to need more people, and that's what I've outlined in this slide. Basically, I wanted to emphasize, and that's why I have this in large print on this slide, is that all of us here, including myself, we are reactionary. Okay? We don't determine who's arrested, prosecuted, what children are taken from their home, how long someone stays in jail, who has a probation violation filed, what type of cases come through the system, what kind of charges are filed. How long someone stays in jail, whether a judge accepts the plea or not, whether we have a fairly easy client to get along with, or whether we have a difficult client, which, we do have some difficult clientele, whether our clients want a jury trial, or whether cases get resolved. All clients have a constitutional right to a jury trial, and we obviously provide them with effective professional advice, but if they decide to go to a jury trial, there's nothing we can do about it. They get their day in court. So we are reactionary, and that's basically summarize our whole presentation, especially mine, is that we don't have a lot of control as to what happens. We just react. And matter of fact, just a couple of years ago, my office had 6 murder cases. You can see how many staff I had. We had 6 murder cases in my office. So myself, I had 2, and then 2 additional staff members had 2 each. And so we never know what kind of cases are going to come in. We don't know what type of cases, but we try best to keep these cases in-house. Blake Schroeder does a great job of assisting with that, because it's cheaper for us to keep these in-house than to send them to a contract attorney, especially like murder cases and high cases that are essentially really difficult and complex. So to summarize my remarks, if you didn't get anything out of my remarks except for this, we are reactionary, and we respond to what everyone else is doing, and a lot of times we don't have a lot of choice in the matter. It just, we react. Thank
Good morning again. I'm Blake Schroeder. I'm the Director of Indigent Defense Services, where I've been at the helm for the last 12 years. We are often asked, what is IDS? Well, we have 4 primary functions. First, all cases assigned to counsel in Mojave County are sent to our office, where we review the information, enter the case into our system, and assign it to the appropriate office. Second, we manage all of the contracts and assignments to attorneys that hold a contract with the county. Third, we manage all of the budgets for other mandated defense services that are shared by all of our offices. This includes things like trial experts, translators, and competency evaluations, to name a few. And then lastly, we manage the county's Title 36 contract which covers court-ordered evaluations and treatment for individuals with severe mental health conditions such as being a danger to themselves or a danger to others. This next slide is a quick breakdown of our budget. As you can see, the vast majority is spent on Title 36 involuntary mental health services and legal services, which are attorney's fees across the many areas in which we assign counsel. Here's a quick breakdown of our legal expenses at a more granular level. You can see that the three main areas are conflict cases, which are cases that cannot go to our staff offices, as well as appeals and parent representation and juvenile dependencies. On the right is a breakdown of the multiple other areas of attorney services that we're paying. Each one is less than 5% of our budget. This financial information is provided to the board on a monthly basis in the county manager's report, as well as once a year to the board in our annual report that gets filed. IDS has two critical needs moving forward. The first is included in the FY26 tentative budget. It's to add an additional FTE dedicated to casework, which will restore our staffing levels to 2014. The second is to increase our rates to attorneys on contract with the county. IDS currently has 4 FTEs, including myself. In FY14, 1 FTE dedicated to casework was eliminated. That was a 20% reduction to overall staff and a 33% reduction to caseload staff. Since then, the volume of cases that IDS manages and assigns to contract attorneys has increased by 60%. So this has resulted in 2 employees doing the work of 3, and we've increased the workload by 60%. This has created delays in case processing and assignment, which causes systemic delays overall. To restore the FTE will cost the county an additional $68,000. Moving on to our contract rates, I want to point out that Mojave County hasn't increased the rates we pay our contract attorneys for 15 years, and we struggle to get attorneys who are interested in working for us. Of the counties who issue flat rates for assignments to contract attorneys, Mojave County is tied as the lowest. The orange bar represents the statewide average, which is $970. The blue bar represents the rate Mojave County is currently paying, $800. To remedy this, I would propose a rate increase of up to $1,000, which would cost the county roughly $75,000 a year based on current assignments. Similarly, our misdemeanor flat rate is also well below the statewide average of $513. I would propose increasing it to $500, which would cost the county approximately $25,000 per year. In summation, to bring our rates up to the statewide market value and make us more marketable, it would cost approximately an extra $100,000 per year based on current assignments. I now am going to turn the presentation over to Bobby Shin, the Mojave County Legal Advocate, and I am cognizant of the time, Chairman.
Thank you, Blake. Chairman, Supervisors, Manager Elters, good morning. I am Bobby Shin, the Legal Advocate. I've been the Legal Advocate since December of 2021. Before that, I was the advocate assigned to the Bullhead City caseload. Prior to my arrival in Mojave County, I spent time at the Maricopa County Attorney's Office and the Maricopa County Adult Probation Department as a probation officer. Before that, I tried my hand at everything from retail to aerospace, trying to find my place in the world. I asked to present last out of all the legal offices because the LAO is unlike any of the other offices. You have the county attorney's office that prosecutes both civilly and criminally, IDS, which guides which cases go to which defense offices. PDO and LDO are exclusively criminal defense offices. But LAO, we are a different creature. We defend, we prosecute, and we advocate. And sometimes we do all 3 in one court hearing. We represent the children. When there are allegations of abuse and neglect in any capacity needed in any court we are called to. In every one of our clients is the victim at some level of abuse and neglect. All of our clients are indigent. Every child is indigent. You heard Judge Moss say that no one wants to stay on the juvenile caseload. I'd respectfully disagree with his statement, but it does take a special breed to do so. There is an exceptionally high turnover rate in the juvenile law due to extreme secondary trauma. You heard Mr. Smith say that child abuse cases aren't the type of cases you would put just anyone on. It takes highly trained individuals to handle those cases.
I'm going to pause you there it is now 10 o'clock, and we do have a public auction we have to get through very briefly, and I'll bring you back to the podium to continue your presentation, okay?
Thank you.
But for now, it is 10 o'clock. I'm going to open the public auction on one parcel consisting of .74 acres with a 4,122 square foot building located at 950 Buchanan Street, Kingman, Arizona. I asked, I didn't, there's been interest in this, but I'm going to open it up. Is there anybody that'd like to start us out with an initial bid on that property? If so, you can come to the podium. Looking for bids on 950 Buchanan Street, Kingman, Arizona. Going once? Going twice? We have no bids. I'm going to close the public auction. And we'll continue the presentation. Thank you. Please continue.
Thank you. Juvenile law is a new and continuously developing area of law. Earlier, you heard that the maximum caseload for juvenile cases is 200 cases per attorney. That number is specific to only one case type, juvenile delinquencies. Looking at the various types of law we must master before becoming a juvenile attorney, it should be obvious we handle more than one case type. Nationally, juvenile attorneys do not use case numbers to determine their caseload size. Nationally, the standard is client count. The LAO represents juveniles ages 0 to 19 when appointed by the Mojave County Superior Court. What that means is that the LAO represents juveniles in any case, in any courtroom, whenever a Superior Court judge believes that a child should have some sort of representation, whether an attorney, best interest attorney, or guardian ad litem. You may look at this list and see an overlap with CAO, PDO, LDO, and the pub bid. But we do have some overlap, but we are the primary juvenile office. LDO and PDO only get juvenile cases when LAO cannot take them. The county attorney does uncontested adoptions. If one of the parties in their adoptions decides to contest the adoption, they withdraw. The case is then transitioned to our office, and we handle the severance and, if needed, subsequent adoption. The LAO can be called to any courtroom for any type of case, so long as there are indications of neglect and abuse. Many of our clients have multiple cases in multiple courtrooms. Many of our cases have multiple clients. As of April 1st, the LAO has just under 400 open and active cases. We have approximately 525 clients. The recommended caseload by the National Association of Counsel for Children is 45 to 60 children per attorney. Presently, the LAO has me, the legal advocate. I manage a full caseload. I actually make sure that I have the largest caseload in my office. I will not ask my staff to do more than I do myself. I have 4 additional attorneys, 2 of whom are new and cannot take a full caseload yet. I have 4 support staff, 2 investigators, 2 office staff. I have requested a zero budget initiative to change our open office supervisor position into an investigator position. This request will not change the funding or budgeting for my office. It will merely provide a more value-added position. A few years ago, the administrative office of the courts restructured and rewrote the juvenile rules of procedure and included a mandate that juvenile attorneys are to meet with their clients in person in their place of residence prior to every substantive hearing for each dependency case. Dependency cases can have multiple clients. Presently, our largest case has 6 clients. The LAO is not in control of where our clients live. That is decided by the Department of Child Safety. and our clients largely do not live in Mojave County. Therefore, the AOC has written an unfunded mandate into the rules of procedure requiring the attorneys of my office to travel the state of Arizona to meet with their clients in person prior to every hearing, as our courts do not waste time with non-substantive hearings. We are permitted to utilize trained staff, our investigators, to make the in-person contact. This travel and in-person contact responsibility makes our investigators a top asset in our office. Right now, if divided evenly, each of my investigators has more than 250 clients. It is impossible for them to maintain that schedule. They need help. What I need in order to keep my office functioning and maintain our compliance with the rules and requirements of the court is at a minimum 2 additional investigators. This would mean not only transitioning the office manager position to an investigator position, but opening 2 additional positions. Presently, one of our investigators in the office is occupying an attorney position. If we were able to transition him out of that attorney position and into a dedicated investigator position, I would have 2 open attorney positions that I could fill. This would leave me with a total of 4 investigators. I'm also requesting a paralegal. The other offices do not have a certified paralegal that I am aware of. However, one of the unique attributes of the legal advocate's office is that we are not merely defense, we are also offense. We prosecute, we defend, and we advocate. We need a certified paralegal to help when we are moving for severance, when we are representing a child in a contested adoption, when we are advocating a position in the alternative to the Department of Child Safety. Someone qualified to review and redact evidence, make disclosures, and assist in research and writing. I am also requesting an additional office specialist. This would allow for greater efficiency and coverage capability. And with that, on behalf of the defense team, I thank you for your time, and we're available for any.
Thank you all for the presentation today. I would open it up briefly to the board for any questions. Supervisor Letman.
Just had a quick question. Blake, could you tell us how you decide when a case goes to the public defender versus the legal defender? I still don't understand the borderline on this.
It's very complicated, but a simplistic answer is it depends on how many parties are involved in the case, such as victims, witnesses, and whether or not the public defender or any of the other offices have ever had to represent them in the past. If they've represented them in the past, then 9 times out of 10, typically the public defender's office or whichever office had that prior representation can't accept the case.
Other questions? Supervisor Martin.
Mr. Schroeder, all total, what you're asking for today is how much? What do you anticipate your needs to be?
For my specific division,
All of them.
Were you at 2 million? 1.2, you were at roughly about $3 million, Supervisor Martin. That's just doing the quick math off my head.
Sure.
Don't hold me to it.
I'm sure you understand, having listened to the other courts, how much they're asking $800,000 and the sheriff's office asking for $680,000, and seeing that our budget has been presented so far that's tentatively balanced. I think if we look at this, $3 million, the $800,000, it's really going to throw things in an upside down position, something we're going to have to work on, I suspect. But appreciate you guys coming down here and giving us your opinion on what you need. And I don't think anybody can look at it and say it's probably not needed. It's just going to be a matter of how do we fund it. So thank you all.
Any other questions from the board? Blake, I had one question. It relates to really only the adults and indigent screening. How does that process work? How do we determine, if somebody is actually indigent, that by law, we have to give them an attorney, and perhaps not all of them would be able to repay some or all of their costs, but is that something that you look at?
So that power lies with the courts. The courts do have screening criteria. The defendants have to file financial affidavits, and then depending on the information that's contained in the affidavits, the court will determine whether or not they meet the standards to have court-appointed counsel, and then the courts will also assess fees at the end of the case.
So there is some sort of repayment if in the judgment of the court they think that they can be put on a payment plan or something like that.
Correct.
Okay. Very good. Thank you for all of your time. We're going to move to the next presentation by the Mojave County Probation Department. You want to come to the podium? Good morning and welcome.
Good morning, Chairman Lingenfelter, members of the board, County Manager Elters, Madam Clerk. For those of you that haven't met yet, I'm Josh Frisbee, Director of Juvenile Court Services with the Mojave County Probation Department. Also have with me Deputy Director Natalie Agers. Just to kind of give you a brief summary of how we got here. Back in September of 2024, we attended the Youth Violence Summit sponsored by the Arizona Supreme Court. We were also accompanied by Kingman Police Department Chief Rusty Cooper and Kingman Unified School District Superintendent Dr. Gretchen Dorner. At that summit, we were given the latest information on the youth violence and weapons offense trends, both statewide, our local data, as well as some nationwide trends. We were also given two tasks. We were to come back to Mojave County and share our local data on youth weapons and violence offenses with our community and our stakeholders, and also to generate momentum in continuing meetings to share information across systems to develop collaboration interventions to help reduce the increases that we're experiencing in youth violence and weapons offenses. We had our first stakeholder meeting in March. It was on March 26th. We held that meeting in Kingman. We had judges, attorneys, law enforcement, school personnel, mental health professionals, among others, attend that meeting. And we were able to share the information relative to Mojave County's trends, and then also we were able to generate some interest in future meetings. Supervisor Letman was kind enough to attend the meeting in March, and we appreciate the invitation to come share information with the board and public today. So what I'd like to do is turn it over to Deputy Director Natalie Agers. She's going to run us through some of the numbers, some of the data relative to youth violence and weapons offenses here in Mojave County. And then once she's done, we'll be happy to take questions. We'll talk a little bit about what our department, what the juvenile court has done to help address this issue here in Mojave County.
Good morning, Chairman, Supervisors. As Director Frisbee stated, I'm Natalie Eggers, Deputy Director for Juvenile Probation. And I'm just going to run you through some of the initial data dig that we did, and then how we got to where we are. So this first slide is just our total referrals that we receive from any law enforcement agency to our department in fiscal year 24. You can see we're back to around where we were initially starting with our fiscal year 17 and 18. We had that decline after COVID initially, and then we've come back up there quickly. This is our violent or weapons referrals by fiscal year. And so the blue that you're looking at, if we just look at like fiscal year 24, is our total violent or weapons referrals that we receive. The red would be total juveniles, and then the gray is total incidents. And that's because there could be an incident that involves multiple juveniles. So the incidents are lower, but the referrals and the juveniles are higher. We had an initial increase from fiscal year 19 to 20, and then it declined again, but now it's continuing to rise after fiscal year 22. This is our proportion of violent or weapons referrals to total referrals. This one's quite eye-opening. So in fiscal year 2017, we had 23 violent or weapons referrals, making up only 1.58% of our total referrals. And then if we jump to fiscal year 24, we're at 51 weapons referrals, making up 3.68% of our total referrals. This is a breakdown of the type of referrals that we're seeing in relation to weapons referrals. I won't cover them all, but red is the first and second degree murder. I believe our presentation before this kind of talked about that. 4 of those being juvenile referrals in fiscal year 23. Fiscal year 24, we had 2. Prior to that, we'd seen none. The turquoise offenses is where we've seen a significant increase in Mojave County. We've seen that in car thefts that have trended upwards. Those are that number's linked closely to our ADJC or Arizona Department of Juvenile Correction commitments. And a lot of those include firearms that were stolen from vehicles during those offenses. The yellow could include our probation youth. We've had a steady incline from fiscal year 21, showing just kind of the population that our officers are required to deal with. This one is just a snapshot showing you it's pretty consistent every year, the age of juveniles that are committing these referrals. Typically, these are our 15 to 16-year-olds. This is likely the group that gets placed on probation or sent to Arizona Department of Corrections. This slide, I will note, it looks like it's decreasing. This slide was provided to us by Kingman Police Department, so it's actually, the numbers are backwards, starting with fiscal year 24 in the front. So this slide highlights a significant increase, 71% in juvenile arrests by Kingman Police Department in 2024 compared to prior years. Notably, this surge has been accompanied by a troubling rise in both violent offenses and the potential for violence. A growing number of these incidents now involve firearms, many of which were obtained through the vehicle burglaries that I spoke about or assessed at social gatherings. And that's from Chief Rusty Cooper. These are historically our number of Arizona Department of Juvenile Correction commitments. In fiscal year 21, we had 4 sent to the Department of Juvenile Corrections. Fiscal year 22, 6, and fiscal year 23, we had 4. Moving to a snapshot starting in December of 2023. These are the commitments summarized throughout the state at that time. So this is just a snapshot in time. So December 2023, we had 15 total youth at the Arizona Department of Corrections. In May of 24, we had 14 total. Up to December of 2024, we had 26 total juveniles at the Arizona Department of Corrections. We are number 2 in commitments, only behind Maricopa County. Surpassing both Pima and Yuma County. So I think this demonstrates a few things. Also the increase that we're seeing in the violence offenses that make them eligible for commitment, but also that the juvenile courts and probation are taking this seriously is demonstrated in these commitment numbers. Just for a historical perspective, we've been tracking this data since November of 23. So far in fiscal year of 25, we've had 13 referrals for weapons offenses just since January 1 of this year. That's an average of 3 per month. Our average daily population in detention during that time has been 13 youth. So these youth account for 23% of the youth that we're seeing in detention right now. Thank you.
So just wanted to talk briefly about some of the things that we've already been putting into place since the Youth Violence Summit back in September, either with our department, with other departments, or with the juvenile court to address this issue. First and foremost, our collaboration between probation and law enforcement agencies for both firearms and violence offenses is key to combating this issue. We've been fortunate to have a good working relationship with our local law enforcement, particularly with Mojave County Sheriff's Office and Kingman Police Department. Our staff have been able to work directly with some of their patrol officers and deputies, as well as detectives, in order to conduct searches and to coordinate activities to address some of these firearms and violent offenses. We've also been able to get an agreement with San Bernardino County Probation Department for use of a gun detection canine. This has been a gentleman's agreement between our department and theirs. They have offered the use of their canine to participate in any probation search activity. I believe they also work with local law enforcement if they have cases that they're working on. The gun detection canine is a specialized canine unit that has special training in order to be used for these types of searches. And so getting access to this service has also been a cost savings to our department as well as the county in terms of resources. Currently working with AOC and the Supreme Court to try to develop a statewide gun safety curriculum that would be designed for youth and families involved with the juvenile justice system. Our hope is that we would be able to provide that to all of our youth that are placed on juvenile probation, also to youth that are detained in our juvenile detention facility, and possibly even deliver that in other areas out in the community. Deputy Director Agers already talked about the case dispositions, but I did want to hit on that. Both the gun violence or the weapons offenses and the violent offenses, the increases we're seeing are taken seriously by both the probation department as a public safety issue and the juvenile court. As Deputy Director Agers had mentioned, our numbers show that we are taking that serious. The commitments to ADJC have risen significantly to the point that we are now only behind Maricopa as far as commitments go. That's not necessarily something to brag about, but it does show, because really our goal as probation officers is to try to keep juveniles in the community and allow them the chance for rehabilitation. But when you have these serious offenses, they have to be taken seriously, and that's why we have the increases in commitment. And then lastly, the other thing that we're looking at is distribution of gun locks to those families who may not be able to have access to safe storage devices for their weapons. Even though we have juveniles that are placed on probation that are not legally allowed to possess firearms, their parents may be able to legally possess firearms. But as a probation department, we're going into these homes, we have to make sure that we have safe access. The court may have restricted access, and so we're trying to help those families make sure that there's a safe storage device in the home to prevent unauthorized access and possible future weapons offenses or violence. So with that, I'll open it up to any questions, and thank you to the board for your time and allowing us to present.
Great. Thank you for your presentation. I'd open it up to the board for brief question and answers. Supervisor Martin, do you have a question?
Yes, sir. Just something to throw out. I was a hunter ed instructor for 25 years. Judge Gary Aaron used to periodically send up people, juveniles from Bullhead City, who had been convicted of a firearm offense of some sort, and I'm not talking about murder or something like that, but of a firearms offense that was lesser in nature. We had them in our hunter ed class, and we actually had success with probationers being ordered to attend those classes. Now, I'm not an instructor there anymore, and I'm not sure what the protocols are, but I would say if you're looking at gun locks, maybe you ought to contact the Arizona Game and Fish Department and ask them if they would think that there would be anything that could be, gathered from sending some of these kids with relatively minor offenses and having them attend hunter education. I know when we first started, somebody made a comment about, well, we're just teaching them how to steal guns safely, maybe not shoot themselves. But as we went on through the program, and I know because I ran some of those kids, we had success. We really did. Some of the kids you see right away. If they're interested, they'll get involved, and it worked. And then some of them obviously come in or gangbangers and said, no, and we'd kick them out. But Judge Aaron, it was a program that he just decided to start on his own. And like I say, I mean, if you're going to look at gun locks, why not think about Hunter Ed? And because some of the components in Hunter Ed, it's not just about hunting, it's about firearm safety and the dangers of the misuse of firearms. So I don't know. I would think it might be something to think about and look at, maybe a pilot program or something, but you would definitely have to go through Arizona Game and Fish to do that.
Thank you for that. Other comments from the board? Supervisor Gould.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sir, rather than developing your own gun safety program, National Rifle Association has a ton of gun safety programs that are available. They're available on YouTube also. Parents can look at the Eddie Eagle program that essentially tells small children to stop, don't touch, leave the area, tell an adult if they find a gun. There's no reason to develop your own program on that. I've got another question for you, but it's off this subject, but it is regarding probation, but let me hold that till the supervisors have had a chance to speak. Thank you.
Other comments? You had data on from KPD on the, do you have any other data on sort of the breakout from our other incorporated communities or the unincorporated community?
We don't have that here today. I'm certain we can try to work with those agencies to obtain that data if the board is interested.
Yeah.
I'm sure they probably published that data somewhere.
You mentioned that you had a strong working relationship with both MCSO and then KPD. Also, Bullhead City Police and Havasu as well. Do you have relationships with those organizations?
We do. In fact, I know we've had some juvenile cases lately in Bullhead, where I believe Bullhead City PD has been instrumental in assisting the probation department with searches and following up in those cases. And I believe we work closely with the school resource officers in Lake Havasu City. In fact, one of those officers attended our stakeholder meeting back on March 26th. So we try to cultivate relationships with all the law enforcement agencies.
Great. Any other comments? Supervisor Gould.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On item 15 on the consent agenda in the procurement report, there was an item for probation called Radical Empathy Virtual Reality Training. You have any idea what that is?
I do have some idea what that is, and I believe it is a simulator software for minor victims of sex trafficking. And I think we were looking at purchasing that as an educational component for the population that we work with for minor victims of sex trafficking.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you for the presentation today.
All right, thank you.
We're going to move to the consent agenda, items 5 through 34. Supervisor Lettman, would you like to remove any items from consent this morning? Supervisor Gould.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item 11 and item 15.
Thank you. Supervisor Borelli. And Supervisor Martin. Great. I was also going to remove 11, so looking for a motion to approve consent agenda, items 5 through 34 minus items 11 and 15.
So moved.
Second.
For that motion, second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? I just appear to have it. Do you have it so ordered? Item 11, approve and award and sign contract number 2025-029 RFP printing and mailing of election materials to Runbeck Election Services, Phoenix, Arizona, for printing and mailing of election materials for a 1-year period commencing on January 5th, 2026 and ending on January 4th, 2027, with the county having the right at its sole option to renew the contract for up to 4 additional 1-year periods on behalf of the voter registration and election offices. Funding for these services will be through approved budgeted funds per fiscal year. We do have one person signed up to speak. We'll get through them first. Ms. Esposito.
Thank you, Jennifer Esposito Kingman. I oppose renewing this contract because when Runbeck prints the ballots for like the early voting, because they mail them out of Phoenix, they are routed illegally through the Las Vegas post office, which is why the county recorder has to inform people that if you didn't receive your early ballot in the mail, you have to wait give it like 10 days or so from, the time that they're mailed, is because they are not mailed from Mojave County, they're mailed from Runbeck and Phoenix. So you're literally sending, in violation of the state law, all the ballots to Nevada to route through the Nevada post office before they come back here to Mojave County. This is a very serious issue. And I think that there's enough time that we really need to explore some other options. I mean, aside from all the other issues that Runbeck has had in the past, which have been in the news, which I'm sure Supervisor Borelli is aware of. But the fact that we're sending ballots to Vegas, we have no control whether those ballots are intercepted. And then you're delaying the problem. What if a ballot is sent through Vegas and it doesn't get to a voter here in Mojave County, and then they have to request another ballot? Well, that ballot's going to be sent right back through Vegas again. So this is a very serious election integrity issue, and I don't think that we should be renewing this contract until we see if there is any other available option that would, where the ballots would be mailed and stay within the state. I mean, I don't know what it would take to do this, but I oppose just, rubber stamping the renewal of the ballot printing contract at this time. Thank you.
Ms. Esposito, which part violates statute, the fact that they leave the state?
Yeah, it's my understanding that ballots are not supposed to be mailed unless they're, unless you're mailing them to someone, like in the military or something like that. It's my understanding, at least through multiple things that I've read, is that they're not supposed to go out of state. Of course, then we have another issue where if people mail them back, I believe, depending on where they're mailed from, they may again go back through the Las Vegas post office before they go back to be counted. And so I think that we need to look into this and make sure that our elections are secure, and that, can perhaps Runbeck can mail those before we renew the contract, just blatantly. Maybe Runbeck can mail those ballots to the Mojave County Recorder's Office and we mail them to the voters or something. But just mailing them directly from Runbeck and Phoenix opens up our election to potential issues that I think, are of concern to this board and everyone in the state of Arizona.
Do you have any concerns with the fact that Runbeck does not comply with Freedom of Information Act requests?
Oh yeah, that too. That's why I said the other issues that I think we're all aware of, So there's multiple issues involved with Runbeck, but, we need to look at other options. I don't know what other options are available. That's not my area of expertise, but I think it should be of concern to all 5 members of this board, as well as the election officials and things that are employees of this county, that we find a better way to do this before we get to the 2026 gubernatorial election. This is a very important election that we have coming up, and not only does it, affect obviously our legislators who are on a 2-year turnaround, but we're looking at the governor's office, we're looking at the attorney general, this off presidential cycle election is very important. And I think that every possible vector of attack on our election system needs to be locked down and secure. And so I know that we have 2 board members here who've served in the legislature and are probably a little better well-versed in this even than I am. But I oppose, like I said, renewing this contract just offhand until we've, figured out if this is the best option we have going forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I have a question for Director Acton and Tara. I'm going to go back to the prior board. I know that we've talked about this issue before, and we had some discussion about Mojave County actually writing its own scope of services, potentially incorporating some cooperative language that other organizations would be able to use, and writing in things that you see with maybe like the money supply, like countermeasures, counterfeiting measures. Is any of that in here, or where does that all stand?
So, good morning, Chairman and board members. A couple of things. This is not a renewal of a contract. This is a solicitation. We published it on our website. We directly targeted ballot and election material printing across the country. We got 2 responses. I think one was out of possibly Illinois or Missouri, and then Runback out of Phoenix, Arizona. We have marketed it as a national cooperative. We scored based on what the county's requirements are and how we've been programming, and Recorder Durst could probably speak more to all of those other initiatives, but we specifically wrote it with the elections and the Recorder's office to meet Mojave County's needs, but we built in some other things in for them to be able to offer pricing and services for other organizations that might want to use this contract. We have built in, an administrative fee, so if anyone uses this contract, it's the responsibility of the selected vendor to notify us, and we'll get a portion of those fees to make up for running the entire contract and addressing any performance issues. So just to clarify a couple of statements, this is not a renewal of a contract. I'm not asking you to rubber stamp anything. We had an evaluation committee evaluate the responses that we received. We sought clarification from the offers that we received that were susceptible for award with Runback. We've gone through a process. I can lead a horse to water, but I can't force them to drink. And so our recommendation would be to move forward with a contract with Runback, knowing that we can market it nationally as a cooperative option for the county and would generate some revenue to help support our department running it.
You said elections department helped with the scope and all that. I don't want to put you in a position where you have to answer an election type of question. I'd like to know what sort of anti-counterfeiting measures are available through the scope of services. Don't know if you're comfortable with talking about that, or if I should ask for Alan to jump on.
I also know that Recorder Durst is comfortable talking if she needed to, and we did get some questions. I'm definitely speaking out of turn, but we specifically asked about the special paper. That's about how technical my expertise is, and we do have an option to use that special paper. I believe it'll increase the cost by like 10 cents per ballot, but we did build those things in. But yes, absolutely. I am not the subject matter expert.
Right. Well, you're trained in contracts, as you should be. So, Recorder Durst, do you feel comfortable talking about that, or should we ask Director Tempert to get on the line? Maybe we could have Alan on the line. Oh, you're right there. You want to come down? Come down to the podium. Get the dynamic duo down here.
Okay, she's going to pass it on to you.
Field it as you may, right? So the anti-counterfeiting measures, the things that we, the county, with your guidance in the scope that we included in the contract, you sort of give the board a rundown, and I'm sure that maybe some of the other supervisors might have some follow-up questions on that.
Basically what we talked about, there's 2 parts of an election. There's 2 parts of an election. Yeah. There's the recorder part and the elections part. The elections department reports to the county manager and the board of supervisors, and the recorder, she's the elected official. Recorder handles voter registration activities, which is a big part of this whole scheme. Now, the recorder starts the election process by registering voters and doing the early balloting all the stuff that's needed for the request, which is very large in Mojave County, which is approximately 80% of all ballots are voted early in Mojave County, just under that. Now, for people to be able to vote, they have to have ballots. That makes perfect sense. Now, ballots aren't something you just can't go and take to a copy machine. That makes perfect sense. I've heard that comment before. Doesn't Alan have a copy machine? No, Alan does not have a copy machine that can print ballots that will read on tabulation equipment. So, bottom line is, we had only 2 vendors quote us for printing of ballots. It was Runbeck, which is out of Phoenix, Arizona, which is probably the largest, and large doesn't always mean the best. I know that very, very well in life, okay? But probably the largest election printing vendor in the United States, okay? We've used them in the past. They've got a very good product. The other company was called No Ink. No Ink is just getting into the business. They do things like poll books and a lot of other things. They're buying like lots of different election entities, and they contract out for people that do the printing for them. Okay? Now they are out of, I think it's Missouri. I'm real sure it's Missouri, as a matter of fact, just right in the middle of the country. Okay? Now, when we went out to bid, we did not put in the bid because it wasn't in before. And when you were Senator Borelli, you were the one who was championing ballots, safety ballots, or the proper term is with ballot guard. Got it. And it was in the bill that wrote that never did eventually get passed, had about a dozen of them in, or whatever, 10, 12 different. Hey, 3 of these or 4 of these could make things much more better. Okay, let's just put it that way, right? Okay, never against that. I was never against that part of it. Doesn't matter. I just think, okay, fine. Is the technology there to be able to do that? Can you do that? And yeah, technology is available to do things. Is it being done? And elsewhere, very little, if at all. I don't know. I don't know the whole country, but not in Arizona. Now, ballot guard. So we didn't even put that out on the bid. But yes, I did ask both vendors what they could do. There's certain requirements that, or we'll use the word requirements, that might make people want our group feel safer with ballots. Got that, right? Runbeck did respond back to me, and No Ink did not, but they said they can do this. They can put invisible fibers in the ballots. They can do proprietary watermarks. They can do IR tagnants. I know what those 3 are. I spoke with them originally 2 years ago when this started. Supervisor Borelli. I was kind of one of the lead people starting this, working with Runbeck. And UV dead paper and microprint. 5 things that they can do. Now, what they have told me, though, is if we were to do this for one, we would actually have to gear up to do for all. And other places, the other counties would have to die into it because they'd have to buy different types of paper to do so. But it is possible to do. And if they got the people to buy in an economy of scales, it would be between 10 and 15 cents additional per ballot on their costing. I don't know if that's for 1 factor or 2 or 3 or 4 or whatever.
So these countermeasures, they're available through this RFP that is being requested to be approved today.
Yes, they are. They're available.
That was my question. Okay. That's all I had. Supervisor Borelli, do you have questions?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Temper, and thank you for being proactive. And my question was going to be, are all 5 of these, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of these, or 6 of these ballot guard counterfeit countermeasures, it is included in the contract? Just want to be specific on that.
They are not included in the price of the contract. This was an addendum that they had sent us and said, if you want to have this done, it will be between 10 and 15 cents per ballot additional.
Okay.
But they quoted straight out like the other
Tara's
vendor.
coming up to answer the question here, whether or not it's available or not under the RFP.
So when we go through the clarifications process, all of the documentation is included as part of the contract. So we have their response to the RFP, our scoring. We submitted a request for clarification, their summary and that clarification. It's an available option in the contract. It's not included in their line item pricing because it's not something that we specifically said we're definitely going to do this, but it would be an option if we chose to do it.
Okay, Mr. Chair. And to that point, Right, we didn't get legislation passed through to mandate this. However, we did, through my efforts and my team of Representative Biasucci and other colleague, that we did put money in the budget that went to the treasurer for a pilot program that was done in Cochise County, and they came up with this with Recorder David Stevens, or working with Runbeck to actually run these through ES&S, Dominion, and Unison systems to make sure they were compatible. Now, they ran a test election, and they are compatible, and so it does work. It doesn't interfere with the tabulating equipment. But more to the point, they have actually 20 tons of this paper rolls already at Runbeck. So I would imagine the first run for us, we probably wouldn't be have to eat that extra cost. Hopefully, we will be the standard bearer for the rest of the state to follow suit and actually help drive this cost down, because it is doable. I have inspected the Runbeck facility, and they are top rate, first rate, and so I am very confident on this. And hopefully, we can include these counterfeit countermeasures, so that way we can be the standard bearer for the rest of the state and actually prove this can be done.
I think that is actually the entire reason we directed staff to do a contract, because we saw an opportunity where Mojave County could write its own scope to include these counterfeit measures to be, and to include the cooperative procurement language where other agencies could use this contract and be the leader, to try to be the leader here. I think 100%. That's what the intent was. So,
Thank you.
I have a question.
Supervisor Letman.
I'd like to pose a question to Attorney Davis. There was a comment made about appropriateness of routing ballots through Las Vegas. Could you bring us up to speed on that?
I could probably address
Supervisor Borelli.
What the statute says is a ballot's not supposed to be mailed to an individual out of state. It can be routed through, even if we used another vendor from Missouri, they're still mailing ballots across state lines. So, but the statute actually says it cannot be mailed or forwarded to somebody, an individual in another state. Actually, the recorder could have answered that question, because she's top notch on the elections.
Any of you would like to add to that response?
I'll add one thing to it. I believe that all of our mail routes through Vegas. I believe all of Mojave County's mail goes through the Vegas post office. I didn't want to say that at the dais because I can't confirm it 99%, but
when I paid my property taxes, it went through.
Recorder Durst.
That's correct. And to be on the active early voting list to automatically receive a ballot for any election you're eligible for, you have to have an Arizona state mailing. If you don't have that, you'd have to request it each time for the election. So even our people in North Canyon that receive mail in either Mesquite or Utah, they have to continuously contact us because they have an out-of-state mailing.
Thank you for that. Any other questions from the board? Otherwise, I'd entertain a motion.
Yes.
Supervisor Borelli.
Chair, I move that item 11 be approved to include the ballot guard counterfeit countermeasures.
For that motion.
I'll second that.
Second, any additional discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes appear to have it, do have it, so ordered. Thank you, everybody. Item number 15, approve March 2025 monthly report for procurement activity between $10,000 and $100,000. Supervisor Gould.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My staff was taking a look at the monthly report on top of the radical empathy program that we got an answer from Probation. We also found something that was paid to we believe it was paid to the Secretary of State that the board actually continued and never approved to be paid. We might try to get an explanation on this.
Director Acton.
Good morning. Thank you, Chairman Linkenfelter, Supervisor Gould. I did speak with your staff this morning, and my understanding is the item that you're talking about is Purchase Order 2025-0659, which was issued to the Secretary of State in the amount of $29,605.13 for our portion of the annual maintenance to the voter registration system. I've asked Recorder Durst to be able to speak to sort of the basis for that, but essentially the item that was tabled by the board was signing an IGA, and I'll let not supervisor, I don't know if I'm promoting you, Recorder Durst speak to. She did some research, reached out to the Secretary of the State. They no longer required a signed IGA. And so meeting our obligation to pay our portion of the maintenance, we did that based on state statute, doing our portion, but there was no IGA signed. There is no agreement with the state secretary.
So rather than bringing that back to the board, we just went ahead and did it?
Payment of invoices that don't require contracts, and honestly, usually contracts less than $100,000. The board has designated authority to me to do that. The reason that the item originally came to the board, it was an IGA. IGAs, I do not have the authority to sign at any value because it's an agreement between two government entities. So we make payments all the time based on statutory requirements and statutory obligations, where what we attach as backup and authorization to move forward. Ultimately, what we could have done is we could have done like a competition in practical, saying we can't pay any other entity to maintain the voter database that they are managing. And so it's just an expense that we had to pay that's within my authority to authorize. So
let's bring up Recorder Durst. I'm sure you didn't make that decision in a vacuum, right? I mean, you want to have it?
Good afternoon, Chairman and Supervisor Gould. So I did bring the IGA to the Board of Supervisors in the second meeting of March. That was then continued to the first meeting of April. Following that second meeting in March, I had sent an email to each assistant for each Board of Supervisor requesting a meeting to get a better understanding of what each supervisor would be looking for. If you wanted to leave AVID, what kind of voter registration database you would be interested in Mojave County hosting, and just kind of get a better idea of what everyone would like. I had meetings with 4 out of the 5 of you individually. And then I continued to reach out to the Secretary of State's office. I contacted them if we didn't pay, what would happen, if we didn't sign an IGA, what would happen, to better understand what Mojave County could be facing. When I had that discussion with their county or their attorney council, they had said that Mojave County was the only county that ever requested an IGA, and we were the only county that has ever signed it. So I continued to do that by my predecessor. She always brought the IGA to the Board of Supervisors. It was always signed and completed. So I continued to do that. But once the Secretary of State's office said we were the only one that needed that and we did not need an IGA, I then pulled it from the April agenda and discussed with the other members that we would continue to pay for the service that we are receiving, but the IGA would no longer be required.
Thank you, ma'am.
Any other comments or questions from the board members? Right. Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion.
Before we go ahead, what was the outcome of the discussion? I believe it was over us creating our own database of voters.
Who wants to address that? Recorder Durst.
So the Secretary of State's office has 7 full-time staff members that maintain the AVID system. I reached out to Maricopa County, who has their own homegrown system, to see what they have. They have about a $1.5 million system annually. They have 33 full-time staff members that maintain that. Mojave County I don't have any staff members that would be able to home grow a system or maintain it on a daily basis. Also, without the assistance from IT and their small staff, we would then need to continue, grow an entire division for a voter registration database. I think a $30,000 invoice on an annual basis is minimal compared to what the county would take on as a whole to have our own system. Not to say that I would ever be against looking at a different system, but I think in the meantime, remaining with AVID would be our best option.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
I'd entertain a motion approving the March 2025 monthly report.
We'll move to approve item 15 as read.
With that motion, do I have a second? Okay. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed?
No.
As appear to have it, do have it. So ordered. Thank you. We're going to move to our public hearings this morning. First public hearing is item number 35. I'm going to read this into the record. Discussion and possible action regarding approve or deny the extinguishment of an ingress, egress, and public utility easements in the Santa Fe Ranch Yucca area, including a 30-foot wide, 1,232-foot long, more or less, ingress, egress, and public utility easement with an additional 8-foot wide, 1,232-foot long, more or less, abutting public utility easement along South Billy the Kid Road, and additionally a 42-foot wide, 1,238 feet long, more or less, ingress, egress, and public utility easement, and with an additional 8-foot wide, 1,238 foot, more or less, abutting public utility easement along East Hardy Drive, and with both extinguishments more particularly described in Exhibit A and is contained with APN 243-08-007, parcel 3380. And whereas roadways and public utility easements were granted per Mojave County records of survey 021-032C, and whereas existing fence encroachments exist on portions of said easements being discussed for extinguishment, if approved, then adopt resolution number 2025-063 to approve said extinguishments. I'm going to open the public hearing on item number 35. We have a few people signed up to speak, the first being Robert Hooper. And Carol Wilk, you're on deck.
Okay. Good morning, Chairman Liegenfelter and board members and Manager Elters and present staff here. Appreciate this opportunity to speak to you here today. I speak in favor of this application for extinguishment of easement, and I want to thank the board for approving mine 2 weeks ago. I greatly appreciate that. But I want to just give you a real quick background so you understand what's going on here a little bit better. Out on Santa Fe Ranch, we have approximately 450 miles of dirt road out there that we are required as a property owners association to maintain. The original developer, I remember attending the meeting that he held in 1997 when all this was presented as an opportunity to invest in land for future opportunities. And he had elaborate brochures and charts and everything out there. Here's where the school is going to go. Here's where the golf course is going to go. Here's where the fire stations go. It was another one of those Mojave Desert Dream things, right, that was going to happen. The good news is it's sort of happening, but it's just taking 30 years to get to where he said it was going to be in a year or two. We have tremendous traffic and tremendous growth going on, but I know for the Property Owners Association point of view that we have no desire to put any more roads in out there. And I don't think the county wants to spend money putting new roads out there. I'd rather see the money going into further paving Alamo Road, which we greatly appreciate. So the idea of having these easements at one time was sort of an idea the developer had to show that we're going to have all this growth. The people who live out there don't want these things to happen. They're getting in the way. Unfortunately, we've had a few folks, like a lot of communities, a few folks have come in from California, Oregon, and Washington that bring their views to the table. And their views with the Property Owners Association, the board, has been, let's bash people to take over. I think they're learning from their liberal folks back in Washington, D.C. how to do that. It's caused some bad things to happen out there. That's really what's going on here, is a few people have said, these folks shouldn't have the rights to their own land. We've just ignored it up here over the last 30 years. It's been like, it's not an issue. All of a sudden, it's an issue. But thanks to staff said, there's a way to end this issue. They said, oh, I didn't know you could do that. And that's to extinguish the easement. And as I said to you 2 weeks ago, this idea of having people drive through our properties and get new roads put in as owners out there, I own 3 parcels out there. I don't want to see that happen. Same thing with Carol. She doesn't want to see that happen. In fact, I would say, more than 2 years ago, we did a survey of all of our owners. We have 2,850 owners and 2,200 owners and 2,850 parcels. And we did a survey, and we got a very good response out of that. I'm done, but I can tell you, most folks don't want that.
Can you state your name and address just for the
I'm sorry, Robert Hooper, 19930 South Diamondback Road, Yucca, Arizona.
Thank you for your testimony today. Thank you. Carol Wilk. Got in a clear, you're on deck.
Okay, so I'm Carol Wilk. I actually reside at 542 Harvard Court in Kingman, but I am the owner of the property on Hardy. You heard from me before when this first came up, and really I just wanted to be here to answer any questions if you have any. I think county staff has done a great job of informing you and doing the research on this. But the other part of it too is that I wanted to make sure that the public who might see this understands that this process of extinguishing easements is not a corrupt process that is somehow been created, by showing me favor or by paying Ron Gould. There's an allegation of that floating around in the community, and I just want to make sure that people know that this is a public process. Anybody in the county can go through this process or request this process. And I know you know that, but I just want it to be on the record that there's no shenanigans, if you will, going on here. This is just a very straightforward process. I just want to be able to leave my fence within that 50-foot space so that I don't have to incur additional costs to move everything. But I already own the property. So that's all I have, unless anybody has any questions.
We're not allowed to take questions during public hearing. Thank you.
Okay.
If we have a question after the close of the public hearing,
Okay.
we'll bring you back up.
Great, thank you.
Gotti McClure. Is anyone in the audience wishing to speak on item number 35? I'm going to close the public hearing on item number 35. It's the pleasure of the board.
Motion to approve.
For that motion, do I have a second? For that motion, second, any additional discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes appear to have it. Do have it, so ordered. Thank you. Item number 36, we're going to open up the public hearing on item number 36. Discussion and possible action regarding approval of the extinguishment of an unused stormwater retention easement encompassing the north 20 feet of Lot 7, Block 1 of Sage Hill Tract, 4179, for Carrie Fearing, owner of APN 227-24007 in the Fort Mojave area, and further adopt resolution number 2025-064 to approve said extinguishment in accordance with ARS 28-7214. We have a couple people signed up. Michael Gonzalez, you want to come to the podium, state your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes. Dana Sellen, you're on deck.
My name is Mike Gonzalez. Good morning, board and chairman. I'm just here if you guys have any questions. That's all. I'm the contractor actually building a pool in the back of their house. So if you had any questions, I'm just here for questions.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Dana Sellen?
Well, my name's Dana Sellen. I live at 3429 Sunbeam Drive in Bullhead City, Arizona. This is a housing tract that we're attempting to pull a swimming pool permit on. And we found out due to some legal things that were put in when they developed the tract that has a retention type system on there. In the meantime, the streets have been graded. All the houses have been graded to drain from the front to the street, and all the water drains around. So it has an easement in the backyard for drainage, but it's not going to be used ever. So we went to the county. They've been helpful. Scott and his people are helping us work with that. We just want to build a swimming pool for this lady, and there's other lots in this subdivision that need to be addressed also because these other people are going to rent it, and we'd like to be able to build more swimming pools in there. So that's basically what this is all about. Pretty simple, common sense type thing. Just want to make sure everybody's okay with it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else in the audience wishing to speak on item number 36? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing on item number 36. It's the pleasure of the board.
Motion to approve.
For that motion, do I have a second? For that motion, second. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes appear to have it. Do have it. So ordered. That concludes the public hearings this morning. We'll move to the regular agenda. Item number 37, sitting as the Board of Directors for Lake Juniper County Improvement District of Mojave County. Discussion and possible action regarding Adopt District Resolution number 2025-01. Accept the owner's request for adjacent property be added to the Lake Juniper Improvement District and change the district boundary to include adjacent parcel described as APN number 330-1484, address 810 West South Shore Drive, a parcel that is not included in the Lake Juniper Estates Tract 3021 located north of Kingman. Director Latoski.
Good morning, Chairman Lingenfelter, members of the board. State statute allows the board of directors, in this instance, the board of directors for Lake Juniper Improvement District, to consider including parcels that are literally adjacent to bordering the current district boundaries to enable an expansion of the district to include that property. In this case, the applicant desires to be part of the improvement district because the improvement district through the county operates a public water system, and the property owner wishes to connect that public water system. Staff is recommending approval in this.
Thank you for that. Open it up to the pleasure of the board. Item number 37. Thank you. We have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion second. Any additional discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes appear to have it. Do you have it? So ordered. Thank you. Item number 38, discussion and possible action, adopt resolution number 2025-037 to accept Superstition Drive as an unsurfaced road from Mano Drive to Arizona Route 66, a distance of approximately 1.64 miles in the Valley Vista area, into the roadway maintenance system on basis of its improvement to county standards through a District 1 ARPA project carried out by WECOM Fiber and the Mojave County Public Works Department. Director Latoski.
Chairman Lingenfelter, members of the board, we're really excited over bringing this item to the Board of Supervisors for consideration. This item, Superstition Drive, provides the first alternate route to Greater Valley Vista, and through the work of the board and District 1 in appropriating ARPA funds, the work of WECOM and their stakeholders, but most importantly, and I'm sorry, I'm a little part, I really have to acknowledge our road division. Steve Vest, our road superintendent, and his crews did a magnificent job facilitating the tie-in into State Route 66, working in tandem with our engineering division, Sergio Godino. We partnered up with ADOT, fulfilled everything that they needed to see with that connection to Highway 66, and really proud to see the outcome of this 1.6 mile alternate route to Valley Vista. It really looks good.
I want to also thank it's a public-private partnership. I want to thank you and your staff and all the folks that worked on this. This is an alternate road out there for public health and safety that's been needed for decades, in my opinion. So I'm very glad that this has finally gone forward. I'd make a motion to approve that.
Second.
Any additional discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes appear to have it. Do have it so ordered. Item number 39, discussion and possible action adopt a distribution strategy for opioid settlement funds. Option 1, utilize the request for proposal process with funding divided equally among the 5 supervisor districts. Option 2, direct funding agreement between Mojave County and the applicant with a request by the district's supervisor subject to approval by the Board of Supervisors. Attorney Davis, did you want to say anything additional to that?
No additional to that. Lou has the beginning of the presentation.
All right, Director Mornian. Good morning.
Good morning, Chairman Lingenfelter and board members. So we just have a very brief presentation prepared for you. If I get the slides up on the screen. So as you are all aware, at the March 3rd board meeting, procurement and public health, I believe, presented to the board. The board's direction from that meeting was to allocate the opioid settlement funds evenly among the 5 county supervisors districts. And so what we're going to discuss today is staff's recommendation on how best to meet that decision that the board made. So our recommendation is $300,000 in funding per supervisor district. Most of you are aware that this is a multi-year settlement that is dealing with these opioid settlements. To date, we have 12 different settlement participants, and those are manufacturers, those are distributors, those are the pharmacy operators. So there's a number of different participants in this national opioid litigation. And the funding that is available fluctuates year by year. So the monies that the county receives from the different settlement participants can fluctuate quite broadly from one year to the next. The settlement participants can choose to prepay earlier than the agreement requires. We've had one settlement participant that chose to prepay one additional year. That happened last year. And so as we're looking at this, the intent is to try and provide some level of predictability in the funding that gets awarded by the county each year. And so our recommendation is $1.5 million in total for this grant cycle. And so that would be broken down between 3 different awards per district, large, medium, and small. So $150,000, $100,000, and $50,000. So 3 awards per district. It's important to note that while all the settlement participants are broadly recognized under the One Arizona Memorandum of Understanding, so it's basically our statewide agreement, some of the different settlement participants also have their own agreement that the county has to go by that stipulates some slightly different reporting measures or slightly different language in the approved uses of the funds. And so our recommendation is that each one of these awards be made discreetly and that the funds be paid out of each individual settlement participant fund. That's why you see the breakdown here, Award 1, Award 2, and Award 3 coming from different settlement participants. We can't commingle the funds from, say, the distributor settlement with the Walgreens settlement. And so we can't award funds from 2 different settlement participants to one entity saying here's $150,000 and $100,000 is coming from one settlement participant and $50,000 is coming from another because of how we have to account for all of these funds and how we have to report them back to the state. And so this is staff's recommendation. I'm going to call our procurement director up here to go over the 2 different options on how these funds could be awarded.
Thank you.
Good morning again. I'm not going to read the slide to you, so hopefully we can make this a little bit quick. But essentially, we're looking at 2 possible options for awarding these funds. I know the board talked about it during the meeting on March 3rd at how we could possibly approach this. We've gone through 2 cycles already prior to the evenly distributing the funds using an RFP process. And one of the benefits of the RFP process is that it establishes a fair, transparent process that's based on evaluation criteria. Everybody's aware of what that eval criteria are when they submit. And then we have a committee evaluate, score based on that criteria, and the top performers are granted funds. It also clearly communicates the National Opioid Settlement Guidance and reporting requirements. And essentially, we're kind of taking a proactive approach when we go through the RFP process in saying, you read through all the requirements of receiving these funds. If you agree to all of those requirements, submit all of this information in advance. So we're not chasing down recipients to get their contact information to make sure that we have a person of contact for reporting structure, things like that. That is one of the struggles that we had with ARPA funding, is sometimes it was hard to explain to recipients what they needed to do to receive the funds. Option 2, if I can figure out how to advance this slide, there we go. Option 2 would be sort of similar to the ARPA process, where each of the board members would designate how they want those funds and where they want those funds to go. The reason option 1 is staff's recommendation is under option 2, the supervisors would be responsible for communicating all of those funding parameters to the possible recipients. The recipients then would present their work plan to the individual supervisor. They would provide the specifics of how they intend to use the funds. And then the board of supervisors, whatever district they were applying for funds in, that supervisor then would bring it to the board for approval, and then we would work on a funding agreement. Again, I keep saying similar to what we did in ARPA, there are different requirements here, and then it would be managing those funding agreements. So the county attorney would finalize the agreement, secure the signatures, and then submit that to the board for final approval. We did find with ARPA, sometimes we were chasing things that, recipients, as soon as it was approved that they had funds, they started spending the money. and yet we didn't have the agreements in place. And so just trying to keep it as quick as possible. And I know Attorney Davis really worked on options for what the funding agreement might look like. Ultimately, we can answer questions for you on what those options are, but we're looking at two possible options. RFP to award the small, medium, and large grants based on where the services would be provided. We may end up doing multiple RFPs. We may do one massive RFP. And then the other option would be asking the supervisors to work with the county attorney's office to secure funding agreements for those funds.
Before we get into the board discussion, we do have one person signed up to speak. Mr. McClure, Scotty McClure, you want to come up?
Scotty from Bullhead. I wasn't here at the only meeting I've missed whenever you guys approved this in the third or whatever. It was quite a disaster the way some of these ARPA funds were given out. I'm still trying to get to the Attorney General on the deal that Hildy made. That was the newspaper down in Phoenix got approval to. This is something I want to put on the call of the public. But I don't trust where some of this money went on ARPA. The first thing Hildy did was give money to the county park down there in Bullhead city limits, give them to repair a friggin' water line. Now they charge admission. Well, up the admission to pay for that water line, not ARPA funds that our great-grandchildren are going to have to pay off anyway. I don't like you five having the only right to say where this money is going. Lippman's probably going to give all the money to Westcare for his voting deal. I hope you guys will do number 2. And as long as it comes back and is up there on that TV, the approval rate, this needs to be done different than ARPA funds were given out. It was just like candy. This needs, and I'm seeing where Ms. Acton had, where it has to be back up here in front of us. And these people can't spend a dime until, boom. It's like ARPA funds that went to Al-Anon down there. They built a bigger building, but they forgot about the parking. They're parking on people's private property. That needs to be discussed. Yeah, I have to go buy them clowns that are pulling out in front of me every day. Now that they don't drink, now they figure they can just do whatever. So anyway, I'm really pissed about some of this way it's been dispersed.
All right, open up to the board for discussion.
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Supervisor Littman.
So a question for Tara. Were you have a recipient provider who crosses supervisor district boundaries, which I believe is going to be the case in almost all of these? How's that handled? What's the procedure for that?
So thank you, Supervisor Littman. We'll work through how we're going to make that happen. So if we were to use an RFP process where we did these multiple awards, the small, medium, and large, that is something that as a team we talked about what would that look like. And ultimately that's where I'm saying we internally, procurement, is trying to decide, do we try to do one massive RFP evaluation where we do one RFP, but we end up essentially having to do 15 different evaluations because we would have them tell us in response to the RFP, I'm applying for $100,000 in District 1 and I'm applying for $50,000 in District 2. And we realized that could get very messy. What we've talked about doing is possibly doing $150,000 grant RFP, $100,000 grant RFP, and a $50,000 grant RFP, and then scoring each of those based on you tell us what region you're going to provide services in. But ultimately, it'll be the top scoring performer in the district that meets the criteria that we would recommend award to. In some situations where we might have, let's say in District 5, a $150,000 recipient, in District 3, a $50,000 recipient, we would be cognizant of that and do our best to make sure we weren't commingling those funds. And so we try to award all of that out of one particular grant recipient. There's lots of things that could happen, and we'll just have to manage it as it comes.
Mr. Chairman.
Manager Elders, and then I'll get to you, Supervisor Borelli.
I yield to Supervisor Borelli if he would like to go first.
You after that.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So the way I understand it, let's just say it's because the court in Lake Havasu, it's actually in District 5. So the drug treatment court, so if District 5 wanted to give 150,000 to the drug treatment court and I want to do 50,000 to the drug treatment court, we could do that.
We would find a way to make it work. Ultimately, what we would have to look at, and you're asking me, but it's probably more of a question for Director Mornian, but we would be mindful of what funds were actually funding that agreement and try to make sure that any one recipient, regardless of which district they were serving, was only being funded out of one of the pools of money. That's really just to manage the reporting requirements.
Thank you.
Manager Elters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I think my comment is related to that question as well. So as you heard from Mr. Mornian, we will be tracking those funds per outfit that dispersed them for use, because that's required by them. And now that the board decided to distribute them per district, we will have a second tier of tracking. And I think what you're hearing, a commitment to figure out a way to do it. If one provider receiving funds operates in more than one district, naturally, or some district has more providers than others, where they may cross district line to provide those services, while it will complicate it some, we discussed how we would approach it and what we will do, understanding that each of you would want to see the 300 in this case, because the recommendation is 300K per district. Each of you would want to see 300K spent in that specific district, and we will do our best working with the provider. We're not going to know firsthand. We're going to need to ask them to report to us so we can relay that information to you, especially if it's one provider working in multiple districts. So, will it be to the nearest dollar? We're going to do our best to track it and report it to you. There might be some flexibility, at least in the second tier of reporting, which deals with the district, because it's all county residents, versus the first tier of reporting, which has to do with the settlement terms and conditions, which we have no choice but to comply with. And I hope I answered it.
Supervisor Martin.
Chairman, yeah, the question I had is, like, Travis and I have, our districts are going to be served basically by the same groups. There's a good possibility. So how does that work? And if I understand it, is that how you're addressing with Supervisor Borelli? Is in those situations where you got two districts that are kind of working for the same goal and have the same people involved, that then staff is going to figure this out so we distribute this in the way we're fixing to vote?
Mr. Chairman and Mr. Martin, exactly. It's easy to see in District 1 and 4 how that would happen, also in District 3 and 5. But please believe me that also District 2 factors in, because there are providers in District 2 that operate in District 1 and 4 as well. So there is going to be some cross services in at least 3 out of the 5, or all out of the 5 out of the 5. Potentially, a provider in District 2 could be up in the Kingman area in either District 1 or 4, potentially also in the Lake Havasu City area, District 3 or 5. So, again, we recognize that it gets complicated. What we want you to know is that we have no obligation, but we have no choice but to track the settlement dollars to ensure that we're not commingling funds on that front. As far as tracking it among the district, we'll do our best to communicate with those providers that are going to work in more than one district that you're going to need to break those services per district so we can report it to our board. And it may not be to the nearest dollars, but we will make the genuine effort to ensure that every district is getting funds as intended by the board member representing the district.
Quick question to you, Mr. Morian, Director Morian. How many years or cycles is this anticipated, just from what you know in the future?
Chairman Liebenfelter, that's a great question. The longest period is 18 years, and the shortest, I believe, is 6 years. But we already have, if I could get the slide back up on the board, this is a good chance to illustrate this. So that NOAT 2 settlement participate down towards the bottom of that table, we will not be getting any more funds from them already. They are involved in a separate bankruptcy action, and so that everything is very fluid with this participant because of the amounts they're involved in with the types of entities they're involved. And so on the long term, 18 years, of which fiscal 26 we're set to be receiving the year 4 payment. We've received 3 payments from the early participants already. And if I could, just to answer Supervisor Borelli's question about the courts down in Havasu, so we would do our best to, if there was an intent from 2 separate districts to provide funding to the same entity, if we are able to, based on the balances of the cash that's on hand from each one of those participants, we'd do our best to say, okay, we have District 3 and District 5, and the total is $200,000. If we have a settlement participant where we have $200,000 that's available to award, then we could award it as one grant that is coming from both of those 2 districts. However, if we're in a situation where we don't have a single participant with $200,000 cash on hand to award as a single grant, that entity would basically have to be awarded 2 separate grants, and they would have to manage funds for 2 separate grants, whether that is 2 very similar programs that they're administering that are running side by side, or whether they are splitting up to where they're doing one aspect of a treatment program from one of the grants and some other type of program from another grant. So as far as we are able to, the county is going to try and make that as simple as possible, but at some point it's going to be up to the grantee to manage those funds appropriately, whether it's a single or multiple grants.
Yeah, well, I asked that question. I'm big on performance metrics, and I feel like perhaps option 2 might be a little bit more conducive to performance metrics year over year. If you're an entity out there that wants to continue during however long these funds are available, if you want to continue to apply for those within a district, at least in District 1, I'd like to look at some performance metrics about seeing, okay, what are you going to do and did you do it? And then that would have an impact on the awards for the next cycle. Ultimately, these funds need to go and get into the hands of where the need is, right? District 1 is a little different. Half of my population is below the Colorado River and half is above. I had some frustration that was communicated to me with some of the 2 initial rounds on the RFP process. Maybe some applicants up north, they didn't understand fully the procurement process. They didn't understand how to do an RFP. And another thing with the RFP process is there's a selection committee involved, and that's removed from the supervisors, and it's in their view and their value judgment how those things are scored, and not the supervisors as far as what's, does this firm get 20 points or 25 points? I think there's a little bit more control at the district office level with option 2, with maybe some of those organizations that don't have as much experience with the RFP process. That might be a positive. And then also you can go out and you can do tours and really delve into it a little bit more, to really understand what they're trying to do. You don't maybe get that with the RFP process. So appreciate you answering my questions. Is there any other questions from the Supervisor Gould?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't see an explanation of the two options in the backup. I don't know where that is. I see basically the first page has the same thing that shows up on the agenda. Then we go into the RFP, but I don't see the options explained to me other than verbally when you guys came to the podium.
Thank you, Supervisor Gold. The options, and what I'm wondering is, did this make it as part of your backup? I'm not sure. We did it as part of the presentation, kind of the bullet list of what they are. And then my understanding is that Attorney Davis attached a sample funding agreement that staff had worked on. So the option one, if you can pull it up on the screen again, what I'm seeing is not what you're seeing, so sorry. Option one is kind of clearly defining it would be an RFP process with scoring criteria. This is very similar, and I'm sorry, I don't know if Attorney Davis, I had provided the last RFP process as possible backup. I don't know if that made it into your guys' backup, but essentially it would go through a procurement process, RFP scoring, and evaluation, and then a recommendation to this board of who we would award. Basically, the change from how we've done it the last 2 years is that we would be clearly designating that the possible recipients would need to tell us what district they're applying for funds in and how much they're applying for based on the award. And then our evaluation would be based on what they say they're applying for. Option two, you think I'd learn how to run this slideshow? Option two, that is the funding agreement option, and that's where we detailed it here. So the supervisor would work with possible subrecipients, determining or sharing with them what the funding levels are and what the general reporting requirements would be. They would then present their work plan to the supervisor and specify how they intend to meet the funding requirements. The supervisor would collect all of that information, contact information, etc., and then present to the board sort of their concept of, I'd like to award funds to such and such organization in my district, provide these services. The board as a whole would say we agree that that's an appropriate use of the funds and would direct the attorney's office to enter into a funding agreement with them. Once the funding agreement was finalized, that would come back to the board. All of that is very similar to the ARPA process.
And on the commingling of funds, that's something that you guys came up with, and it's not something that's contained in any one of these agreements with any one of these various drug suppliers or manufacturers?
Supervisor Gould, what we're basing that on is the guidance that we received from the Auditor General as far as how we have to account for these funds. It's not spelled out in the settlement agreement per se, but as far as the guidance that we get from the Auditor General's office, because we do have to account for these funds and they are part of the county's annual audits, they do need to be kept separate for each one of the settlement participants.
Or they would have to account for how they spent the money inside of whatever program they were spending it in? Or did the Attorney General say no commingling of funds?
We have to book a separate legal settlement receivable for each one of these settlement participants and record that within our books. And then as those funds are awarded out, they need to be, if you have $200,000 that's been recorded as a receivable for one settlement participant, we get a distribution, so we book it against that receivable. Now we have that cash on hand that we can award out. It has to be awarded out from that particular account.
Sure. And
the accounting has to stay, we have to keep track of what is spent out of that account. So the simple answer, it's not spelled out per se in that opioid agreement, but the guidance that we've received over the course of the last several years, because 2 years ago, when counties had first started receiving this money, it was this big open-ended question, and so the Auditor General's office actually did several presentations on this to clarify what their expectations were for how counties needed to account for this.
On the comment of ARPA money going out willy-nilly, I can testify that at least the District 5 money did not go out willy-nilly. It was like pulling teeth. And went back and forth several times. The smaller the group was, the more often it went back and forth. So none of it went out willy-nilly, I'll guarantee you that. And I was questioning the logic of many of the procurement and finance policies at that time. So at least nothing out of the 5th district went out willy-nilly, I can guarantee you that.
Supervisor Gould, I appreciate that comment. Finance has been, and procurement have both been very involved with the ARPA process as well as the opioid process. Both of them have their own reporting requirements, accounting requirements, and so the process that the board put in place with ARPA, where each supervisor was proposing a project, the county attorney was reviewing the project, the county attorney was drafting a funding agreement, the entity in the county would enter into that funding agreement. All of that happened before funds were ever distributed to any of these entities. Most of the ARPA agreements were the entity spent funds and then requested to be reimbursed by the county, and then we would distribute the funds out to them. The difference with the opioids, and this is another reason why our recommendation is to go with the RFP process, is that these funds, as they are grant monies, we would be issuing them to the entities. A lot of these entities don't necessarily have the money to spend before they get reimbursed for it. And so having a solid process in place where each one of the entities that's applying for funds gets vetted in a uniform manner is important, so that the county can be sure that they have the ability to manage the grant funds appropriately. They have the ability, the staffing resources to meet the reporting requirements timely, because it's a very short reporting time frame each year. And some of the entities, and this is what I was kind of referring to earlier, some of them have their own separate reporting requirements that happen at different times in the year. And so there's a lot that goes into it's not as simple as we identify recipient A and we issue them funds and then they spend the funds to administer the program. There's a lot more that goes into it on an ongoing basis. And if grantees don't get that information to us timely in order for us to push our reporting up to the state and for the state to push its reporting up to the national level to the settlement administrator, that can affect the future cash flows that Mojave County receives as well. We could get dinged on that and receive less in future years.
You need to also keep in mind that ARPA was a moving target, that they revised the rules several times and changed added additional categories of projects that could be funded.
Supervisor Gould, that is 100% correct.
No, I would say also in favor of option 2, and it's not a slide on the staff that would be on a selection committee for an RFP, but especially in District 1, with maybe the exception of somebody from our public health department, I'm willing to guess that the individuals on a selection committee for an RFP haven't done a site visit up north at a facility that's trying to do good with these funds. Whereas supervisors, hopefully they're not just sitting in their office and in their chair the whole time. They're out in the community and they're actually doing site visits. They're actually meeting with all these folks and understanding what they do. The problem in District 1 is when you get an RFP proposal from somebody that doesn't know how to do RFPs from up north, and the selection committee has never done a site visit to understand who they are and what they're all about, and to see the impact that they have, there's a lot that's lost in that process. And then you're just trusting that people that have never been up there and done a site visit are going to like what they wrote on paper enough to give them enough points to get some money. Whereas in option 2, you actually have the supervisor that knows what they're doing. They're going up there. They're going in their own district. They're taking site tours, maybe talking to some of the clients to find out what the real impact is. So I think that there's some real value with option 2, but that's my opinion.
Chairman Lingenfelter, those are all great points that you make. I would just say whichever option the board chooses to go with, the timing of it is important. The way that we have proposed doing this is a once-a-year award process, and that is primarily because of not just the reporting requirements that the county has each year, but when the actual distributions are coming in from each settlement participant. We have a couple of them that come in each year in April. The bulk of them come in June, July, and August each year. But there's also the potential that additional settlement participants get added to this. There's a couple that are haven't reached an agreement yet. And so as those things happen each year, and wanting to maintain an award process for the 5 districts, where there's a pretty substantial amount of funds to award each year. If we were to do this throughout the year, then that causes problems. And so looking at the cash on hand at a certain point in the year and saying, hey, for the next 3 months, evaluate where you want to see the money utilized in your district, that makes the most sense. And then we can revisit it next year after the next round of distributions.
Of course, I don't think anybody said anything about doing this year round. This would be a one-time thing. Any other discussion points?
Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Gould.
Do either of you know when the board decided that this was going to go to drug treatment? Because in reality, it was the taxpayers were harmed by the opioid outbreak because we had to jail people and we had to pay the jail costs also.
Supervisor,
I'm not sure when that decision was made.
Supervisor Gould, I don't believe it was the board's decision, and I will defer to Attorney Davis, but the opioid settlement agreement defines a certain number of approved uses that the settlement funds can be used on. They can only be used on those specific purposes.
Mr. Chairman, and board members, to Supervisor Gould's point, leading up to the settlement agreements when Ryan presented to the board in executive sessions, and then later on when those were consummated, the agreements were executed, we asked our public health director, and I believe it was in 2022, we can go back in the records and check the date, but we made a presentation to the board as to what we were receiving, the timeline and the duration, and we talked about those terms and conditions, the 4 pages that were eligible expenses. We presented to the board what areas we would focus on based on Mojave County's needs, and then went with the first and the second cycle of RFPs. So, we've visited about this before, and I'll be happy to dig it back up and refresh the board's memory as to when that took place. That was really all preceded the first round and the second round of RFP.
Andrew, I'm wondering if, since we have 3 new board members, if it might be a good idea to bring that back and to reestablish the priorities with a new board. Attorney Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to clarify for all the members of the board, new and old, that regardless of which option is selected, the One Arizona agreement, with the exception of the NOTAM 2, which is very similar but different, as Director Moynihan was speaking to, we'd have to comply, and the recipients would have to comply with all of those terms and conditions. That's not something we are able to edit.
Sure. I'm going to make a motion, unless you have additional discussion, Supervisor Gould. Supervisor Gould, please.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that the Board of Supervisors adopt option number 2.
And I would second that. Additional discussion. Hearing none. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
Ayes appear to have it. Do have it. So ordered. Supervisor Don Martin's item 40, discussion of requirement of a permit under the International Plumbing Code for water heaters. We have a couple of people signed up to speak. Mr. DeShazer, Chuck DeShazer, followed by Jennifer Esposito.
Hello, my name's Chuck DeShazer from Topeka, Arizona. The reason I'm here is I believe less government tends to be better government, and I had this item come up back when we were talking about increasing the automation fees, and what we're looking at is it seems to be the only permit out there that is for changing. It's made up. We have a template basically for the 2018 International Building Code is like a template. In portions of it, it tells you to various jurisdictions, fill in your numbers, your different things here and there. And this seems to be the only permit that has been brought to the attention of development services that it seems to be just a money grab here at this point, because we were told that they don't even go out and inspect these. You send a pitcher in to be able to match up with the software, and they take your money, and most people aren't even aware of how many that you're supposed to get a hot water heater permit. By the same token, if you read into the International Building Code, you would have to get a permit if they so chose for a refrigerator, a stove, a water filtration system to be installed in your home. And I just would like to see the board remove this, because the numbers that I'm receiving on it are saying that in 2024 there were 16 issued, in 2023 there were 18 issued, and in 2022 there were 37 issued, I'm sorry. And that's from the Development Services Freedom of Information Act that I pulled. And I know there's hundreds of these hot water heaters being replaced, not just 16 a year throughout all of Mojave County. And I would like to just see the removal, if not the removal of this permit. I would like to see at least the elimination of any kind of penalty for it. The current penalty, as I understand it, is 100% of the fee plus the fee, so doubling the fee, and they're not doing anything for it. As far as the insurance issue goes, on the reason for keeping it would be insurance companies wouldn't pay off. Well, I guess that means 17 people might be paid off for a given year if every one of them caught on fire. But by the same token, out in Yucca, we've moved the firemen from that firehouse over to Golden Valley. So how's the county accounting for the public safety issue of, the insurance issue that comes up when a insurance company won't pay off? Thank you.
Jennifer Esposito.
Thank you, Jennifer Esposito, Kingman. This is just another absurd example of why we don't need the international codes. I mean, short of literally tracking every water heater sale at every Home Depot and Lowe's and True Value and whatever to ensure compliance, it's absurd. It's ridiculous. Most people either change their water heater themselves. They have no idea. They call a handyman. The handymen have no idea. I'm sure that, the contractors may not even be aware, but the problem is that these international codes, they are just sort of a framework. You don't have to use them or take them. The board tends to pass them just as a lump sum vote to adopt all of them. We do by law have to follow the International Fire Code in the state of Arizona because they have adopted that. But, the property maintenance code and the plumbing code, once upon a time, all of these codes for building were written by the insurance companies who insured the buildings being built. We didn't even have state codes and all of this stuff. It was literally, if you wanted to get insurance, they would inspect and they would make sure that you were doing things properly. But as Mr. DeShazer pointed out, this is just, it's silly. It's ridiculous. 16, 18 things. This is just one of a laundry list of things that should probably be repealed out of the international codes, which are really designed, they're like HOA rules that don't really apply, especially to the unincorporated areas. I'm pretty sure that Lake Havasu City has their own building codes and permits, and Kingman and Bullhead. So what you're really talking about is sending county, employees to the hinterlands for some of these ridiculous things. And in this one, they don't even inspect. Just send us a picture. Okay, I'll send you a picture of my neighbor's water heater. Does that work? I mean, come on. This is just something that needs to be done. And I'm sure the five of you can find the common sense to make this happen. And this will be a good start on repealing a lot of other silly things like this. Thank you.
That was the last speaker we had. Supervisor Martin.
Yes, when this whole issue came up, can you just, for the record, state, did I reach out to you to talk about this?
No, this came out. I spoke to each of the supervisors or their assistants. I went to all of the various offices because you guys can't talk amongst yourselves because that would be silly. But what it comes down to is I found it ridiculous that they could take a picture of a water heater for a final inspection, take your money, and this is somehow going to stop fires from happening, and it's going to, I just can't see that there's a reason for this. So I reached out to all 5 supervisors basically and have asked them to start looking into various things that shouldn't be happening in this county because we're all adults here and we can take care of ourselves. We don't need to, and another thing is you guys are not on the hook to insurance companies, as far as I can tell, to protect me from me. It's me buying the best plumber I can to replace whatever I need, or if I think I'm qualified, doing it myself. And, it has nothing to do with reaching out to any of you individually. I just saw Doge happening and thought, hey, let's start it here.
But that's, you reached out to me. I didn't reach out to you.
You and him and him and him. And I'd like to get rid of four or five of you so that we don't have any government if I had my way. But, nothing personal against any one of you. But thank you very much. Anybody else have any questions? Or you could ask Scott Holtree if my numbers are incorrect also. And I'm sure he will tell you this also, because it seems to be a standard answer from that department, is that this is the way we've always done it. It happened before I got here. So,
Do you have any idea, any thought, how many people in the general public have no idea that that was a rule?
I know there were over 100 comments on at least one website over the past week since last Tuesday or something, and about 90% of them seem to indicate that they thought you guys were going to impose a hot water heater permit, and most of them had no idea that you had any permits on the books since 2006, back when there were only 3 supervisors at that time, and I was the only person that walked to this podium and said, hey, you guys don't know what you're doing by implementing these building codes at that time, and you've continued to, assault the public.
In your opinion, as one of the citizens, you're not in my district, but you live in Mojave County.
No, I don't even consider you a friend. You're an associate until I've known you for 10 years.
Somebody thought that you and I were buddies or something, and that's why I was doing this.
I'm not even in your district, so why would that be?
Yeah, exactly. And the problem that I see is that the citizens of Mojave County, by and large, had no clue that this was even on the books, and that the erroneous information that was spread, that we were trying to implement something that's been on the books since 2018, was ludicrous. And had they done any investigation, looked at the background information, they would have seen this was for clarification to let the general public know, hey, this was out here. There was information about the reason that a person might want to do this is because of the insurance liability thing. And that's what the whole thing was. It wasn't about trying to institute something that's on the books. It's about some woman that does not do her homework and didn't want to do it. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Mr. Holtree just to satisfy everybody's interest in this, and we'll get the background and everything on it, and we'll just go from there.
Most people are too busy actually working a job to pay your salaries that they don't have time to follow what's going on here.
Let's go to we'll call you back if we have other questions, okay?
Okay, thank
Director
you,
Holtree.
Mr. Chair. Scott, I got a list of questions here for you. Can you just tell us, what is this permit? What's the background of that permit?
Absolutely. Mr. Chair, Supervisor Martin, just to kind of get into the background, we researched our permitting system to kind of see how long have we been issuing these permits. And from our understanding, they've always required a water heater permit. The farthest I could go back was 1996, I believe, was the furthest I could go back on our system. We have issued quite a few permits. I looked at April to April, from 2024 April to 2025 April, and we issued 54 permits. I'm not exactly sure where Mr. DeShazer has received his numbers. I can get with him and we can sit down and make sure our numbers match. But the numbers I have is 54 permits. We did a little bit of research as well as for the other jurisdictions within the area and whether or not they are issuing these permits as well. Most are. Bullhead City, Kingman is not, or they're not if you're replacing a water heater with a similar water heater with what's there. They do not require the permit. Yuma County does. La Paz actually does not as well. Yavapai County does, and Coconino County does. And then Lake Havasu we weren't able to get a hold of. Maricopa County we weren't able to get a hold of as well. But the other thing I'd like to say is that these permits it's a $72.15 fee. It covers the permit application as well as the inspection. It's a same day permit, so if you came into our office today, you could get that permit today right over the counter. The inspections, we do go out to each of these sites and inspect the location or inspect the water heater. I believe Mr. DeShazer might be a little bit confused as we are looking into software that allows us to do video inspections. We have an app that currently allows for that option. We have not been able to get to the point to being able to use that video inspection software. What it does is it allows you to geolocate, make sure that you are at the right property, and then the property owner can just show you, or the contractor can show you the water heater and make sure that we're looking at all the things that we need to.
Scott, and just wonder, why would it be beneficial for a person to get a permit versus not getting a permit and just doing it themselves?
Mr. Chair, Supervisor Martin, absolutely. A few things that we look at that we feel that are very severe when hooking up a water heater is the gas connection and the gas ventilation. We want to make most of them require that gas hookup, and so that's something that has been problematic with homes and issues that we've seen with water heaters is that gas connection. So that's something that we come out and we make sure that it's done correctly. The pressure relief valve and the connection and the piping that we have for that needs to be done correctly. And then the electrical connection needs to be done correctly as well. All of these have to be connected to the electric. The other thing that we found is that manufactured homes actually have different requirements than just a single family residence. And so a lot of homeowners aren't going to know that. And so you're going to have to meet those different requirements. Just to kind of go back, we do not inspect any of these via picture or video. We are currently inspecting all of them in person.
So is there really any insurance liability there? I mean, do we have documentation that the people that don't get permits, if for some reason the thing catches fire and burns down, that their insurance company is going to say, no, we're not covering this?
Supervisor Martin, that's not information that I would have. I believe if Attorney Davis would like to address that, I think he was looking into that a little bit.
Keep in mind, the insurance company is not really insuring the homeowner. He's insuring the guy that loaned money on the house.
Right.
So he's insuring the bank. The bank isn't going to let themselves get bumped out of having their mortgage paid off because the homeowner did his own work.
Right. So if
it was the homeowner, they'd more than happy throw him to the wolves, but they're not going to throw the bankers to the wolves.
Right.
Supervisor Bailey, you had a point as well.
Yeah, so more of a pointed question. So is this permit required for installation or replacement?
Mr. Chair, Supervisor Borelli, when a new home is built, those are included in the permit, so it's not a separate permit. These would be for the replacements.
Okay. Well, you had mentioned that you had gas hookup. I have electric.
Yeah.
It's a plug.
Yeah.
Now, and I can understand the manufacturer home. If you're replacing something, you're going to replace it with the same unit that's identical. So I don't understand. So, electric water heater, you mount it, put the pipes on, and you can you tape it and you plug it in. There's no hard wiring. I can understand. I could agree a permit for installation, new installation, but for replacement, I think it's just too far. Too far.
Mr. Chair.
Too far.
Yes, Scott, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, Supervisor Borelli, just to answer that. So, if it's just a plug, I don't see what the issue would be. But we also are, like I said before, we also are looking at the pressure relief valve and everything that and the piping that goes to that. And then in this instance, with it's just electrical water heater, that's still something that we'd be looking at.
Supervisor Martin, you continue.
Just one question to our attorney here. Are we able to mitigate this rule? Can we change this? Are we allowed to do that?
Mr. Chair, Supervisor Martin, we can, but it's a process. So, as has been alluded to, the state fire code, for example, is adopted by the legislature. In the state of Utah, the state of Utah has adopted through their legislature the entire building code, so their counties can't change them individually. We can, and we have previously, I believe, recently. So what the process is, it has to go to the Planning and Zoning Commission and to the Building Code Advisory Board. They give comments in the same way like a zoning rezone does, and then it comes up here. So it's a process, but yes.
It's a public hearing, is it not?
Yes.
Yeah. One question for you, Scott. This is, from what I'm hearing, this is just a consumer protection, right? Is it something that could be made optional to homeowners, or is it? Because I'm hearing, is it mandated right now, or is it optional for a replacement unit?
Mr. Chair, currently our code requires it. Requires the permit.
If it's only a consumer protection, could it be made optional?
Mr. Chair, absolutely. Like Attorney Davis mentioned, if we would like to remove it or make it optional, that would be something that we could do. It would have to go through that Building Code Advisory Board, Planning and Zoning, and then to the board.
Very good. Supervisor Martin, you had other questions?
That's it. That's what we ought to do, I think.
Other comments from the board? Supervisor Borelli?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, these are guidelines. I mean, we need to really examine what is applicable for us. We can cherry pick anything we want. None of this stuff is mandated. We don't, unless we mandate. So if it's already mandated now, we can unmandate it. So this is why things are written in paper, so you can change it. It's not written in stone. Mr. Chair, I think we need to direct staff to go through this and these guidelines and see what's really necessary.
That sounds like a future agenda item.
Yes.
Supervisor Gould.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Supervisors, remember that we did not have a county-wide building code until, I believe, 2008. So before that, everybody in the county, unless you're in the overlay area, were free to build their own homes to the way that they saw fit. If they fell on their own family, that's their own fault. That's probably something that we should return to, especially to homes that are not even connected to the power grid. Because in the past, that used to be the determining factor, was were you hooked up to public utilities? Might want to consider going back to that. We have a housing shortage, and we don't need to be driving up the cost of housing people. Thank you.
Let's focus on what's agendized today. Look forward to seeing a future agenda item from anybody on that other topic. Looking for a motion or additional discussion. Item number 40.
Mr. Chairman, because it's discussion only, we don't need a motion.
Discussion only?
Discussion only.
My bad. Okay. We're going to go to item 41. Approve the proclamation of April 21st, 2025 and authorize the board chairman to sign the proclamation implementing an outdoor fire and permissible consumer fireworks prohibition. Effective April 22nd, 2025 at 8 a.m. in the unincorporated areas of Mojave County Fire Zones 3 and 4 within the Wallapai Mountain Range pursuant to ARS Section 26-311 and Mojave County Ordinance 2013-04. Mr. Dorner.
Chairman Lingenfelter and board members. For the new board members, it's I will just tell you that it's fairly common each year that we do get to the point where we have we impose what is commonly called a fire ban, but we impose this typically throughout the entire county, and this is a little bit of an aberrancy. Because we're looking at one specific area right now, and that's based upon fuel moistures, lack of snowpack, general health of the forest in the area of the Wallapais, and then in addition to that, just some background information that we also have, that we're aware that some of the water supply wells up there are at lower rates than they typically would be. We're a little early in the year to be doing something like this. However, what we'd like you to do is we'd like you to consider it. We do a determination, and that's done by the emergency management manager, fire officer, who is Mike Browning. And I want to show you what those maps look like real quick. I think I'm going to be able to get that up there. And so we have established fire zones. Those fire zones I spoke about in February, I believe it was February, I did a presentation here, which talked about those, and they're basically identified as various elevations that go, because the fuels vary. The significant difference between the fuels that we might have out here down in the Bullhead area and Lake Havasu area, those are light fuels. They're very dependent. The growth on those is dependent on what type of moisture we've had, which we haven't had a tremendous amount of moisture in the area, so you don't really have a ton of growth that's gone on. But much of those fuels are already drying out fairly quickly. Up in this area up here, you can notice that this is zoned based on these colors, zones 3 and 4, and those areas up there, they depend on, those fuels are heavier fuels, and they depend on things like snowpack, because they get the snowpack and it's in the ground, continues to moisturize those. And we're about, I was speaking earlier with the emergency manager, and we're about 40% of what we typically are for those areas and those moistures. And we're seeing that, and we're seeing the results of it as we move forward. You'll notice I'm going to move this around. There's some other areas that would be considered in zones 3 and 4 as well. Most of those areas there do not, they're in wilderness areas. And so you don't have the same exposure that you do where we have tremendous amount of homes up there. In addition to that, just in conversation with Colorado City Fire District, right now they have a little bit different conditions with their fuels, and they're fairly comfortable with where they're at. Support has been given here by BLM, Arizona State Forestry and Fire Management, and the fire districts up there, Pinyon Pines and Pine Lake, to move this direction, because they do have concerns as well. And we're starting to see fire starts around the state, and the impacts that has on our immediate area, and also include the fact that some of those resources start going to different portions of the state. If you've watched the news lately, you've seen over in the eastern and southeastern portion of the state, they've had some pretty significant fire starts already. I received an email from the fire manager in February of this year where we started seeing an uptick in fire responses. Those are in roadways, and near roadways, and in various areas throughout the state. In portions of the state, not currently here, but the Department of Fire and Forestry has already imposed a stage 1 condition for portions of the state. They have not done that here at this point. Do keep in mind, much of our areas are not in these zones 3 and 4, which meet these elevations. The majority of the county are in lower elevations, and once again, it's based upon fuel availability and also moisture.
You'll notice if you were in this area this past weekend, we had some moisture that's up there, and if you go up there right now, that moisture is very temporary, based upon winds and temperatures, and so it's not like it stays there. So I would just point that out to you, just because sometimes when we look at things from just a short standpoint, we just got some rain. It's been fairly cool, but I assure you that those fields really saw no or little impact from that standpoint. I'm gonna turn around and I'm gonna show you one other map that I think will help you a little bit, just so you're seeing that. This particular map here, if you notice here, we still have the zones 3 and 4. As we look at those, but these are also those areas of private land and where we have exposures out there. And you see that we don't have a ton outside of this immediate area right here. We do have some of them up on the strip, but once again, a little bit different fire conditions up there for them right now. And then this gives you just a little bit better idea, because keep in mind on these other lands right here, which include the federal, state, and Indian reservations, are not affected by the ordinance. So I just wanted to make sure that you understood that as well. The right now in the park, a big portion of that is Wallapai Mountain Park, and the park has already imposed no burns up there, just because there's some concerns about that as well. And then you will, as the year progresses and we get closer to those warmer times, you're going to probably see different stages go through for not just 3 and 4, but all areas for BLM and also for state land. Do also keep in mind that they year round don't allow fireworks and things like that, which is part of this ordinance as well. They just don't, and so just keep that in mind. We can talk a little bit more about drought if you want to talk about that. The emergency manager's here, and he's got a couple slides if you want to hear that, or I'll be prepared right now to answer any questions that you may have regarding this.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? Supervisor Gould.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Dorner. So the motion before us today is the Wallapai Mountain Range in zones 3 and 4, which is basically I-40 to the north and the Chicken Springs Road area, Attawiki up to the south.
I think that would be fair to say. Do keep in mind some of that's federal land as well, and some of it's a little bit lower.
It wouldn't apply to federal land, wouldn't apply to state land, wouldn't apply to tribal land.
Right. And so I'm sorry, I started to interrupt you.
So it's either private land or any county-owned land. This would be in effect.
Correct.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Chairman.
Around Mount Trumbull up north as well, and some of the areas up north.
Motion.
Now, I think you had stepped out, Supervisor Lingenfelter.
I just looked like on the map. So
okay, so as you see that, the areas that we're exclusive on are that Wallapai Mountain Range.
I read it. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Any other questions? Open to a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Hear that motion in a second. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed? Ayes appear to have it, do have it, so ordered. Thank you. Item number 42.
Chairman Lingenfelter, if you just give me just one moment. I just want you to be prepared. As I stated earlier, we'll be back to you for probably the rest of the county unless something significant changes in the conditions. So I just want to give you that heads up.
Thank you, Director
Dorner.
Dorner.
The annual 4th of July fireworks ban where we don't let people burn their own fingers to celebrate their freedom.
Item number 42, receive updated information regarding the board invite to the Mojave County Airport Authority to make a formal presentation requesting the financial reports of MCAA for the past 2 years and requesting a representative seat on the MCAA Board of Directors. We do have one person that has signed up to speak. Scotty McClure, do you want to come to the podium?
Scotty from Bullhead. I'm so against this, having two more board members, because the Bullhead City has voted to get theirself on the board and their big mouth up there. And I'll bet you Letman decides that he's going to be requested that he be appointed to this seat. I I don't know what you know about aeronautics. I want to know what college you graduated. Any of you guys got a college degree on aeronautics? What the heck? Bad enough for the stuff you don't know that you're up here passing more government crap. Yeah, I'm not real happy, but you still haven't gotten Don Laughlin's people here. You don't know what deals he made for that airport. All I see is just you just putting this on the board so you can be appointed and win your votes. I don't think it's any of your business. Well, what about the other airports? How about Kingman? Why don't we have you get on Kingman's board? You get on Lake Havasu's board and Sonny gets on Bullhead's board. That wouldn't be a conflict of interest because you'd be doing this. Well, how come Kingman and Lake Havasu airports are out? We're just doing Mr. Letman's little business here. If there's something wrong with the contract down there, then maybe the attorney ought to do his job and investigate it. It's called a civil not a civil grand jury. You won't let us have one of those. It's the grand jury that should be looking into this criminal offenses down there. Not you, Letman.
Clerk Scooble, if this is listed under you, is it you that's going to provide the update?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just wanted to let you know that we did.
Is your microphone on?
It is.
Oh, okay.
I can use my my mom voice and be really loud here. I apologize for that. So we did invite the Mojave County Airport Authority to make a formal presentation. It was scheduled for May 5th. They asked instead if they could present at the May 19th meeting. They would prepare a presentation to be about 10 minutes and then answer any questions from the board. If you'll let me know, we can get back with them if the 5th or the 19th, I'm sorry. The 19th is okay rather than May 5th. The second item is we've received their fiscal year audits for 22 and 23. They actually put that up on their website as well. So anyone who's interested can go out and download their audits for that. We have forwarded our audits to our chief financial director for his review. And then thirdly, we did send them the recorded BOS resolution formally requesting a seat on the board of directors last week. So we have not seen a response from that yet, but we have completed that.
Thank you for that update. Any comments from the supervisors?
I do.
Supervisor Letman, thank you.
Let's tackle Mr. McClure's comment about me wanting to be on their board. I don't want to be on their board. In fact, I don't think we could be on their board. I think it has to be a staff member that would be on their board, which is fine with me. I don't think any of us up here want to run an airport, but we're sure interested about the land around that airport and the commercial development that is going on and the lack of property tax that is being generated on the vacant land that is sitting around that airport since 1987. So it's been a long time coming. I wanted to update just on that third item, which was, because I did get an update after attending the annual meeting of the Mojave County Airport Authority. I was asked to come into a private meeting along with 2 members of county staff who were there taking notes. And this is kind of the message that was delivered to me. And we've asked to become a voting member of the board. That's our land that airport sits on. It's the land of all the people in this room and that commercial property. We want a voting membership on that board, okay, to help decide what policy is going to be implemented about the development of that land. The message went something like this. The bylaws would have to be changed, and that's a very complicated process for the airport authority. Okay, that would take a long time, and that would require 5 of the 7 members to agree to it, and these are very diverse personalities on that board. That is literally what I was told in the course of this meeting, and that it would take time to change. My God, we've been waiting since 1987. what's another couple of months? And they only have quarterly meetings. Response, call a special meeting of your board to change the bylaws. I'm sure we can make that happen. Second, I was told in the course of the meeting also that instead of giving the county a voting membership on the board, why don't I just join as a member of the airport authority, not a member of the board, a member of the airport authority, and on the day that I would join, I would be appointed to the finance committee, okay, for the airport authority, because it's just about the numbers we want to see. And that was told to me at that meeting. And my response was, I don't negotiate on behalf of the board. The staff does the negotiating on behalf of the board. And I suggested that their board chair set up a meeting with the two gentlemen on my left, okay, and anybody else who wants to attend, but I won't be attending, okay, and they can negotiate, but I think our resolution stands. We're looking for a voting membership on that board, and I hope it happens.
Other comments? I reviewed all the documents, the lease agreements. I find it interesting, this is really addressed to Attorney Davis, that they have two separate lease agreements. One for the airport property and then one for the commercial component, the commercial property. Is that accurate? I think that's accurate.
I believe that is accurate as well.
So up in Kingman, when there was an airport authority, many of the similar issues I see here were occurring, but they only had one agreement. And that agreement was subject to FAA rules. And any of the proceeds on the airport side that they took in had to be reinvested into the airport within a 5-year term. And then there was a hierarchy of needs, common use facilities and other things like this, that they had to reallocate those funds or invest those proceeds in. If they had anything left, the schedule was like A through E. If they had anything left after getting through common use facilities and maintenance and things like this, E, the very bottom, was operations. And Kingman was one party of that contract, similar to here, where I think that they were a passive party to a two-party lease. Here, same thing. I don't think that there's really been a lot of active involvement. There, they did an end run around that whole schedule and spent all of their proceeds on operations, salaries, and all those things. So I'm curious about what's going on there, and I also want to know when they went to a closed board. I think that it's problematic when you have an airport authority that's operating on public land, the county's land, public land, that they would have a public or a closed board. So unless they want you on one of those underling committees, you're not going to get on it. If you're a public citizen or you have experience even, and you want to be involved, there's no way you're going to get in unless they want you there. And what they were doing here with the closed board is they would use those under those three committees, similar, I think is what they had, similar committees, to sort of vet you. And if you would toe their line, they'd maybe put you on the executive committee. You might have a shot. That's my big concern with the closed board in this instance. So I'd like to look at that more too.
I will investigate and get back to the board.
Any other comments? That was for information only. We'll go to the call to the public. We have just a few people here signed up. Sean Reagan. Sean Reagan, Scotty McClure, Armin Stantz, and Jennifer Esposito.
Sean Reagan, Bullhead City. I'm also a business owner here in Kingman. I had originally wanted to talk about my Arizona Veteran Canine operation, but because of the failed bidding for the kennels, the 0.75 acres, it was now my option to go ahead and present to the board, because I had to give, according to what I was told, an opportunity for you to sell it to another party, rather than me just coming up and just saying, hey, give it to me. So there was that opportunity, and the opportunity failed, so now I'm going to present to you another opportunity. Since we have an enormous amount of populated dogs and cats out here, And the animal control has finite resources and finite space for a lot of these animals. It has been our presentation both to Nicole, who runs the shelter, and other members of your staff, that we take over the facility and assist in that. To do that, it requires an enormous amount of money in abatement, because there's a lot of bugs in that place. And the minute you start stirring, and it's going to be a problem. I have just some soft numbers. Roughly $30,000 in fencing will be needing done. To rehab is about $25,000 for the buildings, and the pest abatement is about $16,150 because they're going to have to tent it and then put all kinds of traps and stuff in. I've been in contact with 3 local banks: First Citizen Bank and Laughlin Foothills Bank and Mission Bank. All of them has expressed slight interest in assisting us in bringing it up to standard, and possibly going forward with some donation, but we're in further talks with that. Also, too, there's opportunity for the city and county to donate about $12,500 each, about $25,000, to assist us in rehabilitating. Where the county would end up coming ahead in this is we would also acquire the kennel, keep up the kennel. We would also keep the personnel in the kennel, basically be our kennel. And then if the county shelter requires it, we can assist them with placement of animals if they become overloaded. It makes sense to me. The only problem is the valuation on it is about $328,000, I believe, and that is kind of way above what we're able to do. But we're still able to step up and help and take it off your hands. And basically, it's just one of those nonprofit kind of things. You know, we get it for $1,000. We do all the improvements. We get the grants and whatnot, and then we can thereby assist the county and the city with further services.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Scotty McClure.
Yeah, Sean, how tall are you? Scotty from Bullhead. I'm not hearing anything about AI. And I don't want to hear a bunch of BS from these people that they were just here, these public defenders. Nowhere, they brought up the word translators. Now, I've asked you guys, you no longer need to hire translators for thousands of dollars per trial. You can go to AI and have that done. Laura, I talked to her a little bit before the meeting. Your minutes that you guys approve every meeting, it used to take her an hour for her secretary to do the minutes. Now, she's using AI. Boom, they're done. I'd better hear, when you guys come up with here, from all these people that are going to come up here, parade style, that they are doing zero-based budgets or AI. I'm not expecting it. Phoenix is using them. There's a whole bunch of people that are using it. You didn't know she was using AI. There's a whole bunch of things you can save time and money on these budget items. And I'm done with that. Now, Letman, here, I don't know what you're doing up there, kicking the tires on a building up there in Littlefield, way out of your area. I don't know what's coming up now on the budget or the minutes of the next meeting, but it's kind of out of your area. You're using 3 secretaries. Now, if I have a problem on a Monday and it gets to you, and then I phone Friday, I'm talking to the second secretary. Well, I don't know. She won't be back until Wednesday. I want to hire one person only, not 3 different opinions to be given to you guys. Each one of you guys has at least one secretary. And I don't like you not having a company car, county car, or a county phone. I'm still trying to get Hildy Angus's ass in jail over this stuff she had with the electric company on this plant down there, but they won't do it. I gave them a letter to get to the grand jury, and they wouldn't do it. It wasn't even open when it was given back to me, not even opened. I've got to go to the Attorney General on this. But I think he should be allowed, has to use a You heard of Benghazi and Hillary Clinton? Yeah, using her own private phone. All of you should be doing, if you're on county business, you should be doing county, where I can go public information requests for this. It's just so outrageous that you're trying to, I don't know, you took a trip to Washington, D.C. I'd like to look at your records on what you spent. Or if you were on official business, I don't know. But at least I can go to Laura's office and find out. I can put in a public records request.
Jennifer Esposito. Armin Staines, you're on deck.
I don't know if you can see that.
Get the camera, please.
Thank you. Jennifer Esposito, Kingman. I want to dispel a couple of rumors today. I made Supervisor Gould aware of this. This is a vicious, nasty lie. But the reason that I'm bringing it before the attention of the board is because it's my understanding that Mr. Brian Ware is the husband of the administrative assistant of our county manager. So Mr. Ware has posted in multiple Facebook groups that I heard Ron Gould can't keep his hands out of Jennifer Esposito's pants. And I just want to say that I have no contact with Supervisor Gould face-to-face other than at the quarterly meetings for the Mojave County Republican Central Committee. But this is flat-out libel. This is a flat-out lie. It's absolutely disgusting. But the fact that it's coming from the spouse of a county employee is what makes it despicable. The second rumor I'd like to dispel, and ironically, Supervisor Gould and his wife were sitting behind my husband and I at the Mojave County Republican Central Committee quarterly meeting, was Supervisor Martin had asked why I left the meeting, wanted to know the juicy details. Well, the details are not in dispute. The only thing that's in dispute is whether or not it was appropriate. So I'm going to leave a copy of my newspaper, the Mojave Free Press, which is now online at mojavefreepress.com, so everyone can go online if they want to know and read my critical thinking editorial. It's online now, but I'll leave you a copy. I think that I do have a free speech right under the Arizona Constitution to not clap like a trained seal for a public official whose lack of action in public office literally endangered the safety of myself, the mayor of Quartzsite, multiple people in the community. He's the school superintendent now, and he's under attack for that. Of course, I didn't stick around long enough to question him on that. But in a twist of irony, just to show how much fellow Republicans don't like free speech, I've now been put on comment moderation in the MCRCC Facebook group so that I can't even post now. I believe that people do have a right to boo a public official. There's precedent. A lot of us were state committeemen on the floor in 2021 when the majority of us booed Governor Ducey at the state convention for minutes until Chairman Ward gavelled it back to order. So, it's not like this has never happened before. Oh, I said boo. Oh, the horror. You don't have to like it. But precinct committeemen take an oath to uphold the Constitution. They don't take an oath to uphold the bylaws. I represent 125 of my neighbors as the first point of contact with the party in the district. Thank you.
Mr. Staines, I remind the last speaker that anything that comes up here, this is for individuals to address the public body on any issue within the jurisdiction of the public body.
I will.
Please continue.
Good morning, Supervisors. I'm in Stanger, Fort Mojave, a.k.a. the German. So, our medical examiner made the news again. That's the third time. I don't know why you don't get rid of him. First time, he told us to mind our own business. Second time, he went, or one of his employee went, and told the family, well, she probably was on drugs laying dead in the driveway. Now the third time, they're going, well, he was a really, really bad dude, This is ridiculous. This is coming back to the county. The county name is on the medical examiner. And then the other thing is, like Jennifer just mentioned, Brian Ware. He must not like his wife working for the county. You know, with all this stuff he puts out there on public news and everything, those are lies. 90% are lies. And I don't know why Mr. Elders isn't doing anything, talking to his wife to get this problem resolved.
Sir, we don't have jurisdiction over somebody that doesn't work for the county, and they have
Thank
freedom
you.
of speech too.
Thank you.
We're adjourned.